In the quiet before dawn, when the stars have dimmed but the sun has not yet dared to rise, there lies a silence that feels older than time. It hums beneath the skin of the world, low and imperceptible, like the final breath of a forgotten god. It is in that silence that we first encounter the whisper that would become Sheogorath. Not a scream, not a storm, not a song, a whisper. Gentle, coiling, half mad and half wild. It is said, by whom, no one can truly say, that this whisper was born not from sound but from the thought of sound. An echo that needed no origin, a laughter without a mouth. Some speak of him as the fractured shadow of Sheogorath, whose name meant order, so absolute that even possibility trembled before it. The crystalline prince, they called him, wrapped in inevitability and logic, untouched by doubt or flux. But order, perfect and pure, is the death of choice, the ending of all roads but one, and so it could not stand. The forces that govern the outer void, whether by design or by desperation, cursed him, shattered him, scattered him across the firmament of oblivion like starlight through a prism. And in that scattering, Sheogorath arose. Yet there are others, older voices, whose words are carved into the walls of caves that remember the shape of the void, who tell a different tale. They say Sheogorath was always there, coiled like a serpent in the breath of Padme, woven between the truths of Anu and the lies of the world, that he was not born, but waited, eternal and grinning, for the moment when mortals would begin to question the shape of sanity. That he is not madness itself, but the shadow cast by the idea of knowing. There is no temple to Sheogorath in the cities of men, no cathedral that dares bear his mark in the Empire's stone, but beyond the edge of maps, in the wet jungles of Murkmire and the snow-buried shrines of Skyrim, in the crumbled towers of old Dyreni ruins and the caves that speak when no wind moves, there his name is etched, often upside down, sometimes backwards, always in places that dream. The Shivering Isles that realm both hated and beloved by scholars of the arcane is his seat, though even that term is misleading, for what is a throne to one who sits in every thought that ever turned against itself? The Isles are divided, as all things in Sheogorath's image must be, mania and dementia, two aspects of a whole that cannot ever be whole. On one side, the giddy exultation of inspiration unchecked, colours too bright, joy so sharp, on the other, the drowning abyss of decay, paranoia, grief, the cold poetry of despair. Each feeds the other, each fears the other. There the trees bloom in winter, and the sky sings lullabies to insects. The people, if they may be called people, laugh and weep with equal sincerity. A baker might flavour bread with remorse, and a tailor might stitch garments from screams, not as metaphor, but as function. For in Sheogorath's domain, thought is matter, and madness is merely a different sort of gravity, one that pulls not downward, but inward. Legends recovered from lost pages in the libraries of Firsthold speak of the Mad God's Court, a place where time is treated like wine, poured, age discarded or drunk too quickly. His chamberlain, Haskell, ever patient, ever weary, stands as a contradiction to his master. Or perhaps a mask worn by the Lord of Madness himself. No one knows. To know would be to resolve, and Sheogorath is unresolvable. And yet he is not without worshippers. In dim corners of Cyrodiil, in the half-remembered songs of Reachman and the riddles of Khajiiti moonspeakers, Sheogorath is praised. Not as one might praise Mara or Akatosh, but in offerings of nonsense and reverent absurdity. A poem recited backwards, a shrine built from mirrors and mushrooms, a silence observed at noon, every Fredas. These are his sacraments. They say he once turned a city into cheese, that he once erased a day from time, and none remember which, that he gifted a mortal a fork that could slay gods, then laughed as they tried, that he walks the dreams of kings and whispers secrets, so beautiful they drive listeners mad with longing. But these are only tales, or they are truths, disguised as tales. In the myth of Sheogorath, there is no distinction. The Dunmer, who name him one of the four corners of the House of Troubles, see him as a test of faith, a divine irritant sent by the tribunal's will to challenge pride and wisdom alike. In his laughter they hear mockery of the tribunal's laws. In his chaos, the necessary contrast to Veleth's order, but even they fear to speak his name too clearly, lest it turn their tongues to serpents. Scholars debate endlessly on the true origin of the mad god. Was he the consequence of a punishment, or the cause of all punishments? Is he Daedric in truth, or something else, a dreaming echo of a failed god? Some posit that he is a shard of the heart of Lorcan, twisted and awake. Others claim he is what remains when a being achieves chim and then lets go. But no scroll bears his true origin. No stone tablet offers his shape. He is the lie that tells the truth. The voice that echoes before it is spoken. In the halls of the Crystal Tower, before its fall, there was a chamber scholars dared not enter, not for curses or wards, but for the whispers that lived there, whispers that ask questions in the listener's voice. When the tower fell, some said it was Sheogorath's laughter that cracked its base. Others say he merely watched, amused, and took a pebble from its ruin to keep in his pocket, calling it home, and so the name remains. Spoken softly in twilight, marked on ruins by moss, echoed in the sighs of the lost. Sheogorath, the mad god, the laughing lie, a prince of contradictions, whose realm is the soul's reflection when all reason has departed, and though no one seeks him truly, all who dream have met him, in the folds of thought, in the moment between waking and sleep, in the silence that speaks just before a scream. Shadows lengthen, the world turns, but Sheogorath remains, grinning behind the veil. There are ruins in the northern wastes of Tamriel, where wind never stills, and no maps have dared remain accurate. There, in a place known to no empire and forgotten by all guilds, stands a single obsidian obelisk, half sunken into permafrost, its surface etched with curling scripts that weep when moonlight touches them. It is not known who built it. Some say the snow elves raised it before their fall. Others whisper it was grown from the stone itself, by a thought Sheogorath had but never voiced. But its presence remains silent, unclaimed, and trembling. It is said that those who sleep beside it do not dream as others do. They descend. In the annals of obscure Daedric scholarship, found only in the sealed vaults beneath the arcane university, and the black ink records of Hermaeus Mora's seekers, there are scattered mentions of the Nangasta cycle, a theory not of origin, but of alignment. It posits that the princes of Oblivion, while unfathomable in motive and mutable in shape, obey a sacred orbit of influence. They move not around stars, but around moments of mortal cognition. Madness, then, is not chaos, but alignment without precedent, a connection so deep to the substructure of thought that it frays the pattern, and at the center of this unpattern lies Sheogorath, not as a source, but as a womb. It is in this way he governs, not with decree, not with armies or rites, but with ripples, a whisper spoken into the bones of the world, so that when it echoes, it unravels certainty itself. There are tales of rulers strong, unbending, who began to doubt not others but themselves. They spoke to mirrors. They wept when nothing was wrong. They forbade the color blue. These afflictions were not plagues, not curses, not poisons, but gifts. For Sheogorath does not destroy the body, he liberates the mind from its bindings. The Shivering Isles, seen by few and escaped by fewer, are said to lie not in a fixed place, but folded into the seams of reality itself, accessed not by portal, but by surrender, a letting go. The gate does not open to those who seek it, but to those who cease to seek. The threshold appears not at crossroads, but in moments of surrender, grief, joy, terror, revelation. It manifests as a door in a forest, a ripple in a lake, a crack in a cellar wall, and once entered, the Isles do not release easily, not for lack of force, but for the soul's quiet acquiescence to remain. It is whispered by those rare few who returned, scholars half-starved, eyes too wide, that within the Isles lie two thrones, not for rulers, but for reflections. Mania wears robes stitched with laughter and speaks in verse. It grants visions of beauty that drive men to art, then obsession, then self-immolation. Dementia walks barefoot through ash and speaks only once. Its gifts are suspicion, remembrance, and the weight of forgotten guilt. One side shines too brightly. The other never forgives. Both serve him. The lore masters of the Somerset Isles speak, in veiled tones, of a library that burned itself to protect its secrets. Its last custodian, they say, wrote a single word on every page before the flame took him. Listen, it is said he heard Sheogorath in his sleep, not as a voice, but as a rhythm, a metronome made of breath and silence. What he heard, he transcribed. What he transcribed, he forgot. And so the books weep, ash and song, and the scribes weep, madness and silence. Among the Dunmer, his place is both feared and ritualized. As one of the four corners of the House of Troubles, he is acknowledged not with offerings, but with endurance. In the old temples, now choked with moss and cracked under the weight of their own history, acolytes once sat in rooms of mirrors for 9 days, forbidden to speak, eat, or sleep. If they emerged unchanged, they were blessed. If they screamed, they were healed. If they laughed, they were taken. There is a tale passed in whispers by the Ashlanders of a wanderer who bore a mask he could not remove. It laughed when he wept and wept when he laughed. He walked for years across the ash-choked plains, asking all he met for the name of the mask. None knew. At last he found a cave that breathed. Inside, on a throne of bones and candles, sat a figure made of light and shadow, neither man nor beast, neither Daedra nor dream. The wanderer asked the name once more. The figure only smiled and said, "You've warned me well." Such stories are dismissed by those who walk in daylight and believe in borders. But those who peer too deeply into prophecy or try to name what the stars hide begin to see patterns they cannot unsee. It is known among the Pisijiks, those strange keepers of lost time, that Sheogorath appears not as an actor, but as a variable. He does move pieces. He changes the board, and sometimes removes the concept of the game entirely. The staff of Sheogorath, a relic both feared and misunderstood, is rumoured to hold his essence in part. Made of materials that cannot be named, topped with an eye that sees what has not happened and never will, it has been found and lost 1,000 times. Those who wield it are not empowered, but translated. They become reflections of something larger, older, louder than themselves. And in the echoes of their actions, one can hear the laughter of a god without place. In Cyrodiil, there remains a tavern where the ale tastes different, depending on the day of the week, and the barkeep cannot remember your face from hour to hour. It has no name. The door sometimes vanishes, but those who drink there claim to have seen a man in a coat of butterflies, speaking to a cabbage. Others say he danced with ghosts. The truth? It matters not. The space is marked by silence, and in that silence a name waits to be spoken or unspoken. And so Sheogorath continues. Not in conquest, not in dominion, but in presence. He is the thought behind the thought, the question that undoes the answer, the curve in a straight line. And to know him is not to understand, but to surrender the need for understanding. For there, in that surrender, he is closest, in the mind's quiet collapse, in the soul's quiet relief. When the night grows long and the stars flicker like failing memories, his whisper may find you, not as fear, not as invitation, but as laughter that does not need a mouth. Beneath the crust of known reality, below the threads of causality and the names that bind, there is a silence deeper than time, not the absence of sound, but the stillness of meaning. It is here in this hollow where reason collapses under its own gaze that Sheogorath is said to dwell when he is not dwelling anywhere. Not a place, but a not place. Not absence, but over-presence. Some call it the unroom, others the mirror that refuses reflection. It cannot be mapped, yet it touches every threshold of sanity ever crossed. The Altmer of old spoke in cautious verses of the tonal severance, a moment when a thought becomes too loud for the world to bear, and the very fabric of possibility splits to accommodate it. They believed Sheogorath to be the embodied consequence of such a severance, a mind made into echo. He is not merely mad, he is what remains when thought no longer obeys thought structure. Thus the mad god is not madness in the common tongue, but the purest inversion of the mundus, where logic is a cage and paradox is freedom. The Shivering Isles, though often spoken of as a place of separation, mania from dementia, are in truth a singular organism, breathing with contradiction, sustained by tension. The Isles live through division, but are not divided. Even their roots are intertwined beneath the soil of delirium, where memories are buried alive and unearthed as different truths. A tree that blossoms fear, another whose fruit grants euphoria. Neither good nor ill, only reflection. Sheogorath's influence does not spread like a plague or a storm, for those have boundaries, patterns, rules. His influence unfolds like a forgotten dream remembered wrongly. It appears as doubt and certainty, joy without cause, terror with no shape. The scholar who awakes weeping over a scroll he never wrote. The mason who carves spirals into stone he does not recall touching. The child who names her shadow and hears it whisper back. These are not coincidences. They are invitations. The heartlands of Cyrodiil hold many secrets, yet none so persistently ignored as the cracked stones behind the chapel of Archaean Bravil. Beneath those weathered stones lies a crypt long sealed, not by mortal hands but by laughter itself. Inside, it is said, is a door made of words no longer spoken, and behind that door, a room filled only with questions, each carved into the air, each singing in dissonance. It is whispered that to enter is not to be lost, but to remember that one was never found. Some accounts claim Sheogorath once courted Azura, that he offered her a crown woven from sunset and shadow, and in return she gave him a tear, frozen in mid-fall. When asked what came of it, both denied the memory. Others say he is her antithesis, the moon's madness to her starborn clarity. Yet others propose they are but two phases of the same intention, beauty through uncertainty. For what is prophecy, if not madness that obeys? In the ancient stone circles of high rock, long since crumbled into moss and root, the symbol of Sheogorath was not a laughing face or a twisted fork, but an unbroken ring of salt. The Bretons once believed that to understand him was to step into that circle, to abandon destination, and embrace directionless travel. Those who walked the circle would do so for 7 days, eating nothing, sleeping whenever sleep took them, and speaking only to birds. Few returned, those who did doot books that burned themselves after being read. There is a myth, unsourced, unprovable, that in the Second Era, a minor noble of Wayrest commissioned a mural, depicting all the Daedric princes. When the painter came to Sheogorath, he painted only a blank wall. When asked why, he said, "He asked me not." That night, the noble's estate turned inside out. Staircases to ceilings, portraits where windows should be. Every meal served in the shape of a question mark. The mural remains, still blank, and those who look at it too long say it hums softly, in laughter or in longing. Scholars of the Nibelungen's Veil whisper of the mad god's eye, a star that is not a star, glimpsed only by those nearing death or total clarity. It flickers in peripheral vision, red and oud and blue all at once, and when seen directly, vanishes with a sound like breath drawn in reverse. Some say it is his true form, others say it is the hole left behind where he once stood. Still others claim it is not there at all, but watches nonetheless. Sheogorath's servants are not loyal in the conventional sense. They are aligned, moths to a flame that does not burn, only redefines the moth. Golden saints, proud and cruel, wear radiance like armor and call their madness order. Dark seducers, mournful and cunning, drape themselves in shadow and call their madness freedom. They argue, they fight, they mirror, but all serve, not because they must, because they already have. Their allegiance is not given, but remembered before it was made. Of the mad god's artifacts, many are named and feared, but most are lost or disguised. The Wabberjack, perhaps the most infamous, is not merely a weapon, it is a statement, a declaration that causality is fiction, that a flame can become a frog, that a giant can become a cloud of bees. It does not harm by force, but by rewriting the terms of harm. Those who wield it often lose track of themselves, for each use is a forgetting, each casting a small death of the expected. In Black Marsh the Hiss speak his name in rustling leaves, but only during storms. Argonian shamans sometimes vanish in trance, only to return with eyes of shifting colour, speaking riddles that no one understands, not even themselves. It is said that Sheogorath walks the swamp paths in shoes made of music, and where he treads, memory bends. The mud remembers different footsteps, the insects sing in reverse, and still he is not worshipped in the way mortals know. There are no sermons, no texts of dogma, no temples lit with sacred flame. There is only the moment of turning, the instant a mind ceases to obey its own rules, when fear becomes joy, when doubt becomes clarity. That moment is his altar, that moment is his name, and so he endures. Not as a lord seated in majesty, but as a question without punctuation, a laugh without tone, a truth that unroots all others. When all the stars fall silent and the sea forgets how to rise, his echo will still remain, unasked, unanswered, and ever listening. There is a chamber deep beneath the city of Alinor, sealed behind 12 doors, and a spell of forgetting. It is not marked on any map, and its existence is denied by all known records. Yet, in the dead hush between the 8th and 9th bells, some apprentices swear they hear something behind the walls. Not voices, not movement, but the sound of parchment unraveling, endlessly, as if a scroll were being written backwards. This chamber, known only in rumour as the Hollow Lexicon, is believed by the most obscure sects of Segic thought to be a node, a place where Sheogorath once thought too loudly and left behind a fracture in narrative itself. Within such a place, time ceases to progress. The air becomes thick with unresolved metaphor. Visitors, if they can be called such, report seeing their pasts enacted before them in impossible ways. A father who never existed weeping beside a cradle, a childhood pet that whispers prophecy, a version of themselves that moves slightly out of rhythm. These are not illusions, they are truths unbound from consequence. For in the echo of Sheogorath's breath, the lie becomes the vessel of deeper truth. In the ancient calendars of the Needies, a day exists without designation, the 34th of Rain's hand. It does not appear on any official ledger, and yet certain old journals reference it as if it were natural. Events are ascribed to it: a harvest, a marriage, a sudden snow. The day has no sunrise, no dusk, and no star ever claimed it. Heretical astrologers call it the hushed day, a temporal aperture through which Sheogorath reaches, altering memory and meaning without trace. Those born on it are said to speak in palindromes as infants, then forget how to sleep, with their eyes closed. Among the tribes of the Reach, particularly those still loyal to the whispers of old gods, there exists a rite called the beckoning. It is not performed, but stumbled into, a moment where a tribesman, upon gazing into fire or mist, begins to laugh, a laughter not born of mirth, but of unbearable recognition. The laughter continues, for minutes or for moons. When it stops, the tribesman either walks into the mountains, never to return, or becomes mute forever. The elders say they have heard Sheogorath's riddle, and in hearing it have become the riddle themselves. In the libraries of Apocrypha, if one dares compare madness with knowledge, as some do, there are codices sealed in rings of silver and memory, bound with instructions that cannot be read before being forgotten. One such tome, the Daedric Lexical, contains a single sentence written across 4,000 pages, a sentence attributed not to any mortal scribe, but to Sheogorath himself. The sentence makes no sense when read, but when dreamt, it is said to undo grief. No one has dreamt the whole of it, and returned with sanity intact. The mad god's influence weaves not only through thought, but through silence. In the catacombs beneath Sentinel, once a place of royal burial, there are whispers that grow louder the less you speak. Scholars who have dared the lower vaults report that if one remains utterly still and quiet, words form on the stone around them, phrases never spoken aloud, fears never admitted, desires never named. Some write prayers, others confess crimes, a few simply write their own names, again and again, until the stone breaks. These are the places Sheogorath touches, without step. The fork, as a symbol, is sacred to him, not merely the wabberjack, but the utensil itself. Two paths from one stem, a tool of division masquerading as unity. There are villages in Valenwood where the fork is forbidden, and meals are eaten with fingers, not from tradition but fear. The Bosmer there say the mad god once danced through their forest and turned their utensils into snakes. The snakes bit no one, but whispered secrets about the food they touched, and after that nothing was tasted the same again. Some mages theorize that the madness of Sheogorath is not random, but fractal, a higher pattern that cannot be perceived linearly. That within each act of irrationality lies a seed of unbearable precision, that laughter, madness, and contradiction are the only languages capable of describing certain truths about Arbius. This theory, known in hushed corners as the hidden ratio, is studied only by those willing to lose themselves. Most who pursue it vanish. Those who remain speak only in poetry, or sleepwalk with ink-stained hands. In the marble cloisters of the Temple of the One, before the Third Era's quiet decline, there was once a tapestry depicting the gods, 8 divines and more, some say, but tucked in one corner, unassuming, was a jester, rendered in thread so pale it could barely be seen. When asked, the weavers would not speak of it. One whispered that it must always be included, else the whole cloth unravel. Another said it was never woven, only appeared. Over time, the jester changed. One year he wept, the next he bled, the next he danced with no legs. Then one year he vanished, and with him, half the tapestry turned to dust. The weavers said nothing. They never mended it. Sheogorath's presence, then, is not one of destruction, but of removal. He does not break the world. He removes the idea that it must make sense. He is not the storm, but the question of whether the storm ever occurred. His is the mask that reveals the face beneath by replacing it with another, and beneath every such mask, there is always a smile. In the southern coasts of elsewhere, travelers speak of a place where the tide comes in and never recedes. An unending shoreline where footprints do not vanish and fish never rot. They say there is a hut there made of spoons and torn paper, where a man lives who does not age. He paints the horizon each morning with a brush dipped in silence, and each evening the sun sets in a different direction. When asked his name, he weeps and laughs, and says, "I am the colour you've never seen." The Khajiit call him a whisper of Sheogorath, the name fractured, softened by desert and dust. So the mud god wanders, not across lands, but through understandings, not from place to place, but from meaning to unmeaning. He inhabits those moments of turning, the instant a mother forgets her child's name, the second a song is remembered wrongly, the flicker of hesitation before a faithful man blinks at the altar. In that pause, Sheogorath blooms, and in that bloom the world does not die, it simply changes shape. In the forgotten marshes beyond Gideon, where the fog does not lift and the insects chant names no mortal taught them, there is a tree that grows without bark. Its roots do not touch soil, but memory. Its leaves fall upward, only to vanish into thought. The Argonians of nearby tribes do not name this tree. They walk wide around it. They leave no offerings, for they believe it was not planted by hands or storms, but by an idea so strange that even the Hist refused to drink it. They call it Sulvarth, the unspoken seed, and in hushed tones, some suggest it bloomed the day Sheogorath. And what is a blink, if not a moment of darkness between seeing? In the cosmology of the mad, every absence carries presence. Every gap is not an error, but an invitation. Sheogorath does not fill those gaps. He creates them, nurtures them, listens to what they whisper. When a painter forgets the face of their muse, when a bard stutters mid-song and feels their throat close, when a scholar loses the thread of their own theory and begins laughing, there he is, not as a force, but as the shape that remains when form is forgotten. The Dunmer, who fear him and honour him in equal measure, speak of a stone kept in the catacombs of Necrom. It is blacker than void and warmer than fire. It hums not with sound, but with question. Each who touches it hears a different thing, a riddle, a memory that never happened, a scream in their own voice, a lullaby sung backward. The ordinators allow no one to study it for more than a minute. They say those who linger too long begin to listen, truly listen, and that once you listen, you begin to answer. The stone is called the heart's joke, and some say it is a tooth from Sheogorath's smile. In the old text of the Marukati, there is a forbidden volume, Etera de Unmasked, that proposes a heretical theory that Sheogorath is not a Daedric prince at all, but the accumulated pain of gods who broke their own shapes. That when Magnus fled, and when Trinimac was swallowed, and when Lorcan laughed through his heartless wound, a residue remained, one that knew only laughter as its structure. This residue, this divine exhaustion, congealed into a name. Sheogorath, they write, is the echo left behind by gods who no longer believe in themselves. The Khajiit have many names for the mad god, though they speak them rarely. Sheogorath is the most common, the moon dancer, the clawed smile. In their lunar theology, he is said to be the reflection of Joan and Jode when seen through tears. He appears at moments of lunar alignment, not marked on charts, when the moons forget their pattern and overlap in unnatural ways. On such nights, the desert sands hum, and dreams do not end upon waking. Those who sleep beneath the open sky during a Sheogorath moon often wake with hands stained by ink they cannot account for, or with pockets full of teeth that do not fit any mouth. In the twisted labyrinths beneath the Shivering Isles, known to only the most fervent devotees and the most unfortunate wanderers, there lies a well with no bottom, called the Whispering Pit. It is said to speak in questions, not aloud, but within the marrow. Those who lean too far over its lip do not fall in, but fall through memory, through identity, through meaning. A high elf priest once returned from the pit's edge, having forgotten her name, her order, and her tongue. And yet she could quote every line of a play, never written. The cult that formed around her called her the Oracle of Reversal, and they built a theatre with no stage, no audience, and no doors. Artifacts attributed to Sheogorath often defy the boundaries of form. One such item, known only as the Spoon of Undoing, appears throughout history in wildly differing shapes, sometimes as a simple utensil, sometimes as a staff, sometimes as a reflection in water that burns when touched. All accounts agree it causes that which it touches to forget its purpose. A sword forgets it is sharp. A fire forgets it is hot. A man forgets he was once a child. The spoon does not harm. It removes, and in that removal, a new shape begins. One authored by Sheogorath, or by the absence he inspires. In the still waters of Lake Ilinalta, beneath the surface where no fish swim and no light settles, there is a single marble statue. It depicts no known god, but its face wears a grin that disturbs rather than comforts. The locals believe it once stood in a temple to Juliananos, long lost to a flood. Yet the statue's grin, the exact curl of it, the teeth that do not meet, match certain illustrations found in madmen's diaries and dream-scribed treatises on Daedric influence. The statue cannot be raised. Each time a net touches it, the boat tips. Each diver forgets their task. One Breton woman returned speaking in riddles and sewing her hair into shapes. She called the statue he who drowns in silence. Some say Sheogorath does not exist at all, that he is a placeholder in the mind for what cannot be born, grief without shape, joy without anchor, madness that does not destroy but redefines. That he is a necessary illusion, summoned by mortal minds to survive the impossible. But if he is illusion, he is one that leaves footprints, broken compasses, and songs with no beginning. Illusions do not build realms. Illusions do not laugh behind the veil of sleep. Within the College of Winterhold, an experimental group of mages once attempted to summon not Sheogorath, but the concept of Sheogorath, not a being, but a thought too dense to think. What emerged was not a voice or vision, but a silence that displaced objects, turned ink to sand, and erased the word reason from 1,000 books. The experiment was abandoned, and all records sealed in a vault beneath the midden. Yet on certain frost-heavy nights, that silence still hums beneath the stones, and candles flicker in ways not explained by wind. Thus, he endures, not through presence, but through unpresence, through the thought you are about to have, through the hesitation before speech, through the breath that never quite leaves your lungs. He is not at the edge of sanity, he is the space beyond it, where stars form names and names form doorways and doorways lead inward, always inward. In the moments before sleep, when the mind loosens its grip and the world softens into hush, there exists a passage, unseen, unmarked, but always present, a liminal place where thought no longer obeys form, and memory begins to fold upon itself, like parchment too long held near flame. This is the hour Sheogorath favours most. Not the midnight of ritual, nor the morning of reason, but the in-between, the moment when a mind stands upon the threshold and wonders whether the dream it will enter is truly its own. In the remote ridges of the Geron Mountains, etched into wind-worn stone, there is an ancient carving so fine it can only be seen in moonlight. It depicts a spiral that turns inward, yet never centers. Around it, a ring of faces, some weeping, some laughing, some unknowably blank. The carving is known as the mind's path, and it is said that those who stare at it long enough begin to forget where they are standing. Some turn in place for hours, believing themselves to be walking straight. Others sing lullabies in languages long dead. The spiral is not cursed, it is a question, a riddle so old it forgot to be answered. The tribunal, when they still held sway over Vardenfell, forbade pilgrimage to the peaks near Ghostgate during certain lunar convergences. Not for fear of physical threat, but for spiritual drift. Pilgrims who ventured too near were found days later, speaking fluent tongues they had never studied, quoting verses from texts unwritten. One man recited the death of a god that had not yet occurred. When asked who taught him such things, he said, "I was visited by the space between my thoughts." He wore a crown of mirrors and a robe of soft screams. The temple sealed the path and never spoke of it again. In old Yokudon manuscripts, salvaged from shipwrecked text thought lost in the churning of Satakal, there exists a parable titled, "The Sword That Could Not Cut." It tells of a blade forged from contradiction, given form by a smith who refused to believe in edges. The blade, while incapable of harm, could remove the concept of defense from one's mind. Enemies would lay down arms, not in surrender, but in profound confusion. The final line of the parable reads, "And thus the warrior wept, for he had forgotten why war was." Scholars believe this to be a masked reference to Sheogorath, not as destroyer, but as the unraveler of intent. There is a shrine hidden in the salt flats of Tyr, a stone altar sunk low into the earth, visible only after long droughts. It bears no symbol, only a single shallow bowl, perpetually empty. The Dunmer say it is the mad god's table, not for feasting but for fasting, for Sheogorath does not always grant madness in excess. Sometimes he gives it in silence, in hunger, in the ache that comes from a need you cannot name. Offerings left there vanish overnight. The wind speaks in riddles for days after. The locals do not approach. They leave salt in their doorways and speak no names until the sky weeps again. In the star charts kept by the Glenmoral Words, there is a constellation unnamed in modern astrological thought. It appears only once every 1,000 years, formed of stars so dim they seem like scars on the sky. The words call it the Laughing Hold. When it emerges, dreams across Tamriel shift, artists paint in unfamiliar colours. Children wake in tears, unable to speak their fears. The moons seem to tremble, and in those nights, the words light no fires. They say even flame forgets itself when the whole is laughed. Sheogorath's realm, the Shivering Isles, breathes its own laws, laws that change as they are spoken. It is said that to write them is to lose them. A mortal once tried, a scribe from the Imperial Library, methodical and devout. She carried 10 quills, 7 inkwells, and scrolls enchanted to never decay. For 7 days she recorded what the stones told her, what the wind whispered, what her shadow insisted. On the 8th day, she wrote her name, and it disappeared. On the 9th, her hands. On the 10th, her purpose. The scrolls remain, but their words shift each time they are read. Now they serve as mirrors for the reader's thoughts, written not by ink, but by meaning itself. In Mournhold, a statue once stood in the garden of a minor noble, carved from soapstone and given no name. It bore a curious grin, asymmetrical and unreadable. Flowers bloomed unnaturally around it. Even in winter, guests refused to speak near it, claiming to hear faint murmurs whenever they approached. One day, the noble vanished. In his place, A second statue appeared beside the first, identical in every way but slightly smaller. The court mages dared not move though for decades. More statues appeared, each smaller, each more silent. They are now buried beneath stone and shame. The city records do not mention them, but the statues remain. The Wabberjack, Sheogorath's most infamous artifact, is not merely an instrument of change, it is change given form. Each use is a violation of causality, a hymn to the unpredictability of the Arbic weave. Some mages who study it believe the staff does not transform objects, but instead changes the observer, that a goat turned to gold remains a goat to itself, but to the viewer, it becomes treasure. In this way, the Wabberjack is not illusion or trickery, but a divine reordering of perception itself, a statement, perhaps, that what we see is merely a consensus waiting to be broken. There are whispers in the chambers beneath Evermore, in vaults where the air is older than the stone that holds it. Their scrolls, written in no known hand, speak of the quiet madness, a form of Sheogorath's influence, not marked by frenzy or laughter, but by stillness, a madness that hides in the margins of thought, that coaxes one to forget joy slowly, gently. It leaves no scars. It inspires no fear. It simply empties. And in that emptiness, his presence smiles. Not cruelly, not kindly, merely there. Thus, the mad god does not scream his truths. He does not demand belief or adoration. He waits, always at the edge of meaning, ready to step forward when the mind falters. He is not the voice in your head, but the breath between its words. And when all logic is laid bare, when truth becomes unbearable, it is his hand that gently turns the page. In the hours before dawn, when dreams have begun to sour and reality creeps back in like cold through stone, a silence falls across the land. Not emptiness, but anticipation. It is in this hush, when the stars seem to waver and the horizon has not yet found its shape, that Sheogorath's breath is most often felt. Not heard, not seen, simply felt. As though the world, for just a moment, considers being otherwise. A tree thinking itself into water, a stone longing to laugh. A name forgetting it once belonged to a person. And in that stillness, a choice is made, not by the world, but by something beyond its reach. There exists in the bone-choked ravines of Craglorn, a forgotten temple buried beneath layers of sand and argument. Its entrance has no door, only a veil of smoke that smells faintly of cloves and regret. Within lies the altar of diverging paths, a slab carved in the shape of a spiral, folding into itself. Around it, hundreds of footprints in concentric circles, none leading in, none leading out. The local nomads tell of dream walkers who vanish for days, only to return with their voices reversed and eyes too wide to blink. They say the altar does not speak, but waits, and when it is ready, it chooses a mind to reflect. Often that reflection cannot be returned to the mirror. Among the lesser-known relics of the Third Era is the Quill of Discomposition, a writing tool said to inscribe only that which is untrue, and yet upon being read, is always believed, crafted, some say, from the feather of a bird that never flew. It was rumoured to have been gifted by Sheogorath to a playwright in Sentinel. The plays that followed were strange and tragic, their lines recursive, their endings simultaneous with their beginnings. Crowds wept without knowing why. One scholar who attempted to study the quill awoke, each day, unable to remember the previous. Eventually, she wrote her own name on her walls, over and over, until the room resembled a chant. The quill has not been seen since, but fragments of its writing surface in dreams, often etched into frost or echoed by falling leaves. The Nibonese riverfolk speak of a woman made of wind who walks across the water during fog-heavy mornings. She carries a lantern that glows with a colour that cannot be named and sings lullabies that unravel memory. Children who hear her forget their alphabets. Elders recall lives they never lived. Fishermen claim she wears a crown of bent forks and walks backward while laughing. Though she is never seen beyond the mist, her presence lingers like wet silt. She is known only as the Fog Mother, and though no one speaks it aloud, many believe she is a facet of the mad god's will, a mothering aspect of his unmaking. In the shattered remnants of a now-lost Aelide enclave, beneath what was once Kvatch, there rests a single unlit brazier in a room with no ceiling. The stars shine through regardless of weather or depth. Carvings along the wall depict not battles or gods, but questions. What is light before it is born? Where do forgotten names go? Is a scream still sacred if whispered? These questions spiral outward from the brazier, as if trying to escape its. Some believe the chamber was an attempt by the Aelaids to contain an idea too dangerous to think, to trap a portion of Sheogorath's essence before it could ripple outward. But madness is not so easily contained. The brazier has never held flame, yet those who enter report warmth. A warmth that deepens into fear, then joy, then a silence too loud to endure. In Cyrodiil, there is a hill that refuses to be measured. No matter the method, walking, mapping, magic, the distance from base to summit changes each day. Some travelers climb for minutes, others for days, only to find a single withered tree at the top, beneath which sits a stone bowl filled with buttons. Not valuable, not enchanted, just buttons. No one knows who places them there, or what. The locals call it the Hill of Slight Misunderstandings, and say it was cursed by Sheogorath after a cartographer tried to draw a perfectly accurate map of the mind. That cartographer is now said to reside inside the hill, whispering incorrect directions to the route. Sheogorath's presence is often felt strongest, not in strangeness, but in the familiar turned quietly wrong. The spoon that no longer stirs, the song that ends before its middle, the door that opens to a room that was never built. These are the moments when reality exhales, when its taut structure loosens, and the mad god steps in, not to destroy, but to reshape by absence. In his realm, what is missing holds more power than what is present. A throne without a king, a laugh without a mouth, a sky without colour. The Dwemer, in their cold calculus, feared such absence above all. They named it Negan Hatter, the not math, the equation with no centre, whose sum could not be held. Their records recovered from the deepest chambers of Nukaleft and Badhardams include references to a shadow within their tonal architecture. An imperfection, a riddle that could not be tuned. Some believe their disappearance was not the result of divine interference or hubris, but rather an accidental invitation, an opening too wide in the fabric of thought. And that Sheogorath did not take them, but merely offered a question none of them could unask. In the old, half-forgotten oral traditions of the Reach folk, there is a tale of a man who carried a bag of names. He wandered from village to village, offering to sell them to those who felt theirs no longer fit. Each name he gave changed the bearer. A boy became a wolf, a widow grew wings, a chief began to speak in numbers. Eventually, the man opened his bag and found it empty. No names remained, so he gave away his own. And in that moment, he smiled. Some say the name he gave was Sheogorath, others say the bag still roams, searching for new mouths. The mad god's worshippers, if they can be called that, are often solitary, erratic, unclaimed by the great cults. They do not proselytize, nor do they often gather, but in certain places, at certain hours, they converge without summons. In cellars filled with mismatched clocks, in caves where time flows backward, in taverns where no one pays and no one leaves. They do not speak his name. They do not chant or kneel. They only listen to the silence, to the turning of thought, to the thin, reedy laughter that grows in the cracks between ideas. And when the gathering ends, they part with no farewells, each returning to their own, slightly altered world. And so he persists. Not as storm, nor flame, nor voice, but as pause. As the quiet just before the wrong word is spoken, as the breath between forgetting and knowing. He does not come with trumpet or blade, but with a mirror that turns inward and keeps turning long after reflection should end. There is a tomb beneath the waves of Topple Bay, visible only during those rare moments when the sea forgets how to move. When the tides fall still and the stars ripple in the water like thoughts unclaimed, the tomb rises just enough for its door to surface. A single slab of coral-stained obsidian, marked by no symbol save a faint indentation, as though a forehead once pressed there in desperate reverence. The sailors call it Madman's Rest, though few sail near, not for fear of storm, but for fear of silence. the kind that sinks into bone and tells you secrets that were never yours. Legends tell of a priest of Arche who attempted to sanctify the tomb. He walked the seabed on a night of dead moon, bearing relics, prayers and resolve. When he returned, his hair was white and his eyes filled with music no one could hear. He spoke only once before vanishing. There is no death down there, only the forgetting of life. Some say he met Sheogorath beneath the sea, not as a god but as a question. The final one, the one that breaks the tongue. In the Tower of Tel Morra, where the wise woman Dratha once dwelled, there remains a hidden alcove behind a wall that should not exist. It opens only when no one is watching it. Inside, a mirror, not polished glass, nor silvered steel, but a surface made of cooled ash and regret. Those who gaze into it do not see themselves, not truly. They see possibility, versions of self that never lived, the road not taken, the wound not healed, the smile not returned. It is said the mirror was given to Dratha by a visitor who arrived without entering, who spoke riddles into the dust and left laughter behind like incense. She called it the mercy of madness. The mirror of ash has not been moved. It cannot be. Those who try find their own reflections clinging to their backs for days, whispering doubts in familiar voices. The Telvanni no longer speak of it, but the dust in the alcove shifts of its own accord, arranging itself into phrases. You are almost different. He still waits. Truth is what forgets itself first. In the hidden schools of mysticism beneath the imperial city, where time is studied, not as a river, but a corridor with folding walls, there is a heretical theory that Sheogorath is not bound to the flow of time, but exists at its every interruption. Each pause, each fraction, each moment, when one forgets why they entered a room. When a name hovers on the edge of recall, when one looks at a lover and suddenly sees a stranger. These are the intervals between reality's breaths, and in each, the mad god watches, not to act, but to note, and sometimes, noticing is enough to change everything. On an island off the coast of Pyandenia, shrouded in mist and marked on no maps, there exists a garden that grows only illusions. Flowers that vanish when smelled, trees that cast shadows shaped like people you miss, fruit that tastes like lost memories. The Marma fear this island and speak of it only when drunk or dying. They say it was once a piece of the Shivering Isles that drifted too far and became real by mistake. Now it lives in the edge between being and not being, tended by a gardener who sings backwards and weeps in soil that rejects roots. Sheogorath is not change in the sense of becoming. He is change in the sense of unbecoming. The unraveling of expectation, the unraveling of self. He does not ask who you are. He waits until you are almost certain, and then offers a reflection that winks, a mask that speaks with your voice, a truth that echoes until it hollows. It is not malice, it is not mercy, it is simply different. The Bretons of Wayrest once told a tale of the Laughing Bell, a great bronze instrument that rang of its own accord whenever someone within the city told a lie they believed to be true. Over time, the bell rang so frequently that it cracked. When it shattered, the sound did not end. It scattered, embedding itself into mirrors, window panes, voices. Even now, some say you can hear the bell in your own laugh, if you listen just before the echo fades. The bell was forged, they say, from ore gifted by Sheogorath to a mad tinker who had asked for the sound of a forgotten god. And yet, despite the stories, Sheogorath is not always felt in the grand or the strange. Sometimes his presence is in the small fractures, the fork that goes missing and appears under your pillow, the page in a book that changes each time you read it, the sudden realization that a childhood memory cannot have happened, yet lives too vividly to doubt. He is not the author of madness, but its gardener, tending the soil of the mind, pruning reason, watering doubt, whispering to the roots of logic until they twist. In Hammerfell, among the ruins of a Dwemer observatory, there lies a device shaped like an hourglass turned sideways. Sand flows neither forward nor backward, but inward, vanishing into the center. The Red Guard, who once guarded the ruins, said that dreams near the device collapse into loops, and waking thoughts fragment like broken timepieces. On the stone pedestal, an inscription. He walks where time forgets to look. No one knows who etched it, or if the stone was etched at all. Sometimes it simply appears in new languages, new forms, whispering from beneath layers of dust, and still mortals seek him. Some to worship, some to bargain, some to curse. But Sheogorath is not a god one meets. He is a god one becomes aware of. In the tilt of a thought, in the slip of a name, in the tear that forms without cause and vanishes before it falls. He is not the voice you hear, he is the reason you cannot remember what it said. He does not dwell in madness. Madness dwells in him, a guest too comfortable to ever leave, a song that forgets its end. And in this he is not cruel. He is honest, in the way only chaos can be. He shows the mind what it cannot bear to see, and then, with a smile, he asks you to laugh. In the deep places of Nirn where light no longer speaks, where even the whispers of Etherius are swallowed by root and ruin, there is said to be a stairwell that spirals into silence. Its stone is not carved, but grown veins of thought crystallized into winding steps that hum when touched. No handrails guide the descent. No wind stirs the dust. Those who have found it, or rather been found by it, describe a feeling of being observed, not by eyes, but by concepts, regret, curiosity, memory, all turned inward, and at the bottom of the stair, a door without a frame, pulsing slowly, like breath held too long. The stair is known by many names: the descent of knowing, the spiral of what if, the tongue-eater's path, but most call it the laughing depths, and those who return, if they return, speak only in images, a candle melting into bone, a map that draws itself in tears, a throne made of unanswered questions, and always, always, the sound of gentle laughter that never fades, not mocking, nor joyful, but patient. It is said that Sheogorath built the stair in a single moment of introspection, when he wondered whether he himself was real, and the doubt formed stone, and the thought bore shape. For what is madness, if not the architecture of doubt, the spiral path by which certainty collapses into symbol, and symbol into nothing at all? That stair is not just a place. It is the shape of a question that has no honest answer. In old Nordic tales, there is mention of a mountain that walks, not in the sense of movement, but in the sense of presence, a mountain that appears where it is not, that casts a shadow where there is no sun, that enters dreams with the weight of forgotten ancestors. The scars say it carries a temple on its peak, a temple made of laughter and eyes, where voices drift in circles and never leave. This mountain has no name, for naming it is said to call it closer. They refer to it only in metaphor, the stone that watches, the climb that never ends. The oldest shamans speak of a figure within the temple, robed in mismatched colors, holding a staff that bleeds honey and whispers. Sheogorath, they say, does not reside there. He is the temple, and the mountain merely his footprint. Elsewhere, among the ash-choked valleys of Vardenfell, lies a ruined theatre of unknown origin. Built into the cliffside, its stage is open to the stars, though no performances have ever been recorded. Yet, upon the worn stone seats, one can find impressions, not of bodies, but of minds. Scholars who sit there feel thoughts, not their own. Scripts unfold unbidden. Words emerge on tongues that had not sought them. Some write plays in fevered trance, others cry, laugh, or fall silent for years. The theatre is believed to be a wound left by Sheogorath in the fabric of narrative itself, a place where stories go to dream. Not all his marks are grand. In Churl, a simple door stands at the end of an alley that never existed on any map. It appears only to those who have spoken aloud to themselves for 7 consecutive days. The door bears no knob, no hinges, only a small brass plaque etched with the words, "As promised." Those who enter, if they do, are never seen again. Yet sometimes new books appear in the library of the local temple. Books written in the hand of the vanished, filled with strange recipes, hymns to insects, or instructions on how to fold time like paper. The priests do not catalogue them. They simply place them in the back, beneath the shelf marked unfound. Sheogorath's essence is repetition, with deviation. The pattern that mimics itself until the mimicry becomes mockery. The rhythm that repeats until it breaks, and in that break, new rhythm. It is said that he teaches not through lesson, but through contradiction, that his sermons are circles, his logic is spiral, his truth is echo, and those who seek him through clarity find only reflection. In the dreams of certain moth priests, he appears not as a jester nor madman, but as a book bound in unknown leather, a book that turns its own pages, a book that reads the dreamer line by line, whispering their deepest beliefs in reversed sequence. These dreams always end the same, with the dreamer waking to find their journals blank, their name written on the wall in dust, and the taste of lemon on their tongue. They do not fear the mad god. They simply no longer recognize their own thoughts as their own. Legends tell of a crystal in the depths of Blackreach, not Dwemer nor natural, pulsing with faint laughter too faint to hear, but too loud to ignore. Those who sleep near it dream not of places or people, but of colors that do not exist, words without letters, shapes that cannot be drawn. One Khajiit scholar called it the jewel of the fifth mouth, and claimed it was Sheogorath's lost tooth, fallen during an argument with himself. The crystal is guarded by nothing, for nothing will approach it. Even the Falmer leave it untouched. Sheogorath is not chaos for chaos's sake. He is what lies on the far side of understanding. When reason fails, when patterns fray, when stories collapse inward, there he waits. Not to punish, not to reward, but to reveal, to show the soul its shape, when all scaffolding is removed. For in the absence of identity, what remains is essence, and his realm is made of essence, unbound. In the darkest corners of High Rock, some still whisper of the name that sings, a phrase that cannot be spoken, only remembered, and once remembered, never forgotten. It is said to be Sheogorath's true name, or the echo of it, or the silence that came before it. Those who hear it laugh once, weep twice, then vanish on the third breath, not in body, in presence. Their absence becomes part of the room. Chairs feel less stable, paint fades faster, clocks refuse to chime. And so the mad god remains, not as tyrant, nor savior, nor flame, but as possibility, vast, echoing, gentle in its devastation. The hand that offers a mask not to hide the self, but to reshape it. The whisper behind the veil, the smile beneath the scream. He is not worshipped, he is remembered, even by those who never knew his name. In the western reaches of the Colovian Highlands, where stone outpaces tree and the wind knows only its own echo, there stands a ruined fountain, carved into the slope of a forgotten hill. Water no longer flows from its mouth, yet the basin remains damp, forever kissed by a moisture that does not come from rain or spring. Around it lie shattered goblets, all etched with mismatched symbols, stars with too many points, letters from no known alphabet, and faces half-formed, as if the sculptor lost memory mid-chisel. The place is known to few as the fountain of once was, and to those fewer still who dream of it. It is said to quench not thirst, but identity. According to suppressed monastic writings from the Iliad Bay, the fountain was built to honor Sheogorath, not in devotion, but in fear. A covenant of monks sought to contain what they could not understand, to lock away a concept by drowning it in ritual. But the mad god cannot be contained, for he does not reside within. He exists around, through, and after, and so the rituals folded upon themselves. The monks forgot their names, and the fountain was left to weep alone beneath the sunless wind. South of Senchol, where jungle gives way to tide and tide to sand, there is a stretch of shoreline where no waves break. The water simply rises and falls like a breath too tired to exhale. There, within a cove shaped like a yawning mouth, the Khajiit speak of the tide that forgets. It is said that when Sheogorath, as he is named in their lunar dialect, walks the shores of Nirn, he does so here, not with thunder or mirth, but with quietness, wearing no face, leaving no trace. Those who camp too near the cove awaken changed, their stories backward, their dreams hollow, their reflections delayed. One child returned speaking perfect Old Meris, though no one could understand her meaning. She smiled and pointed at the sea, whispering, "He is learning to sleep again." In aetheric theology, there exists a notion of echoes without origin, patterns in magic that appear where no spell has been cast, veins of starlight running through rock, songs embedded in silence, glyphs emerging on skin without pain. The Piegics have recorded such phenomena for centuries, often in conjunction with Sheogorath's name. They believe these echoes to be the nervous ticks of reality, involuntary spasms, as the dream of existence brushes too near the dreamer. Some see madness in such things. The Piegics see potential. They write in scrolls that vanish upon completion. What he touches does not break. It forgets that it was ever whole. In the catacombs of Elenhir, beneath layers of failed tombs and unfinished temples, a stone mask was unearthed. Smooth as oil, cold as loss, and blank, featureless, yet always familiar. Those who gaze upon it say they see their own face, only slightly wrong, an eye too close, a mouth too still, a smile that stretches a breath too long. The mask resists containment, chains rust faster near it, paper wilts, fire burns blue. A mage attempted to classify its enchantment, only to conclude it does not possess magic. It remembers it. Some theorize the mask is not a relic, but a gift left by Sheogorath to show mortals what it feels like to be observed by something that does not blink. Deep in the Dragontail Mountains, among ridges no cartographer claims, and peaks named only in dreams, there is a tree whose bark reads like text, not carved but grown, letters in unknown syntax constantly shifting. Travelers have tried to copy the runes, only to find their parchment covered in poems about things they never felt, griefs they've never suffered, joys they do not recognize. One Bosmer called it the weeping alphabet. Another called it the root that speaks of rain. But all who see it feel the same thing, that the tree is waiting to be read, not by eyes, but by souls, unfinished. The Reach folk say it grows from a splinter of the mad god's tongue. Sheogorath does not arrive. He emerges, in the forgotten, in the overwritten, in the fold between cause and effect. He is not summoned, but uncovered, like dust in sunlight, like old laughter in the bones. His voice is not loud, nor kind, nor cruel. It is inevitable, and when he speaks, reality does not tremble. It listens, and in that listening, it forgets what it was trying to be. The Argonians of Thorn tell of the silence that swims, a ripple beneath the surface of still waters that consumes no fish, moves no silt, but remembers every death that happened nearby. They say it is the echo of a Daedric sigh, that when Sheogorath grieves, the world forgets how to move, and so the silence was born, not as punishment, but as release. His-touched seers claim that on certain nights, the silence can be heard breathing beneath the riverbank, whispering names that were never spoken aloud, names of things not yet born, names of thoughts not yet thought. In a locked vault within the Crystal Tower, before its fall, there was said to be a tapestry stitched from dreams, threads of memory, knots of sound, colours unnamed in mortal tongue. It did not hang from wall to floor, but floated mid-air in a slow rotation, like a planet of cloth. The Ultima refused to speak of it, even among themselves. Some say it was Sheogorath's first attempt at art. Others say it was a reflection of his realm, woven by mortal minds touched by his shadow. The tapestry is gone now, swallowed with the tower, but dreams of it still surface in scholars who sleep too near corrupted ley lines. In the margins of the commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes, there are footnotes in ink that fades when read. Phrases like, "The knife forgets the cut," and "Laughter is merely silence," inverted. These notes are not referenced. They are not indexed, yet they appear identical across dozens of scattered copies. Some believe they are Sheogorath's annotations, laughing quietly at the arrogance of mortal interpretation. Others believe they are reminders that madness is not the absence of meaning, but its excess. Too much pattern, too much truth. So much the mind can only laugh, and perhaps that is the truest face of the mad god. Not a jester in rags, not a god of noise, but a scholar of silence, a weaver of possibility, who smiles as we forget our own outlines and begin again, not from scratch, but from shift. He does not wait at the end of the road. He is the stone that changes shape beneath each step. Ben weaves the roots of an unnamed forest in northern Valenwood, where the canopy so thick a blanket of shadow that even starlight forgets its path. There lies a hollow in the earth where no plant grows. The Bosmer call it no veil, a sacred absence in the world. They do not approach, they do not speak of it unless pressed. And even then, they do so with songs rather than words. For they believe it is not a place but a memory too vast for any one mind to hold. A memory gifted by Sheogorath, or perhaps taken by him, and left behind like a book with no title and no final page. The hollow is not empty, it hums. Not with sound, but with intention. Animals do not cross its threshold. Rain does not fall within its bounds. And if one listens closely, with the kind of listening that forgets hearing, they may feel a presence that feels not other, but once was. Some have emerged from the hollow, changed. One spoke only in colours for the rest of his days. Another composed a symphony of silence, performed once, never repeated. The mad god's influence here is not chaos. It is reversal, of will, of meaning, of knowing. In the old libraries of Alienor, buried within tomes too damaged for reading and too sacred for burning, there lies a description of a tower that turns inside out. Its floors descend upward. Its doors open into questions. Its rooms forget their shape the moment they are left. It is not named, for it names you. The Ultima, who recorded it, never claimed to visit, only to dream, over and over, the same architecture, the same voice in the walls. One phrase remained constant across all accounts. All halls lead to forgetting. All forgetting leads to me. This tower, some believe, is a sliver of the Shivering Isles that broke off during the first shift of Mundus. Not torn, but invited. A seed of contradiction. A fracture made whole. Its stairs do not spiral, but pulse. And those who dream of it wake with soil beneath their nails and the taste of parchment in their mouths. Mages have tried to chart its dimensions in trance, but their maps turn to dust, always dust. The Dunmer, more than most, understand the divinity of contradiction. In their ancestral rites, there is a ceremony called the Second Morning, performed not for the dead, but for the a ritualized madness, a surrender to voices not your own, a week of forgetting, followed by a single night of clarity. It is said that this tradition was gifted by Sheogorath long before tribunal times, a blessing to remind mortals that grief is a form of becoming, that pain, when worn long enough, speaks in riddles, that the gods who change us do so without warning, and that the mad god watches not from malice, but from recognition. For who among us has not laughed at the moment tears broke? High above the Nibene basin, in cliffs only the eagles remember, there is a cave whose mouth appears only in winter, when the frost splits stone like time splits memory. Within a pool of ink-still water, black not from depth, but from meaning, it reflects not what is above, but what is beneath, and not beneath the cave, but beneath the self. Those who gaze too long see not their face, but their first doubt, a moment in childhood where something was lost. A toy, a word, a belief. Some scream, some smile, all leave with one fewer truth than they entered with. This pool has no name in any known tongue, but its symbol appears in Sheogorath's oldest shrines, a spiral curled inward upon a single drop. The eye that sleeps, the mouth that never closed, the memory that still waits. It is not a test, it is a gift. One must choose to look. Madness here is not given. It is recognized. In old Orcish war prayers, those sung beneath the moons before the siege, when blood had not yet answered fire, there is sometimes a verse out of place, a line that does not rhyme, a note too long, a word that refers to no known thing. These lines are not mistakes. They are offerings, for the Orsimer know the value of dissonance. They call such verses Gu Shura, the sacred fracture, and believe they draw Sheogorath's eye, not as a plea, but as a reminder that even in rage, even in order, there must be one thing that defies the blade. Legends speak of a wanderer who appears when roads are most forgotten, when paths overgrow, when signposts crumble, when even memory walks in circles. This wanderer wears mismatched boots, a cloak made of maps, and carries a key that fits no lock. They ask only one question of those they meet: which way were you going before you became yourself? Those who answer truthfully forget their pain. Those who lie forget their name. And those who refuse to answer become the next wanderer. It is said the mad god does not send them, nor create them. He simply watches the cycle, a soul unmade and remade by the question. The cloak passed from shoulder to shoulder, the maps never matching the ground beneath. And always that same question, echoing back through footsteps not taken. In the wild scripts of the illusion school, the ones never formally taught, passed only in dreams from teacher to student, there is a spell that does not alter sight, but certainty. Cast it upon an object, and you forget whether it is real. The cup might quench thirst, or pass through your hand. The door might open or be wall. The spell's name is lost, if it ever had one, but its source is known. Sheogorath's laughter weaves through its casting, not loud, but inevitable. And when the caster forgets what they were trying to do, the spell is complete. Not all knowledge is safety, not all madness is noise. In the vaults beneath Cloudrest, in records sealed from even the Queen's sight, there is reference to the scribe who erased the world, a Moor of unknown house, who wrote a book so filled with untruths that reality bent to accommodate them. Stars changed places, rivers flowed backward, names rearranged. The book was burned, the scribe was not. He vanished, leaving only a single phrase scrawled in ash on the floor. He whispered, and I believed him. That is Sheogorath's true gift. Not destruction, not chaos. Belief. The belief that things might be otherwise, that the stone might sing, that the mind might slip its own leash, that reality might not be the final word. And so we walk, unknowingly, through his domain, not with fear, but with fragments, echoes, slight misrememberings, and sometimes, when we laugh for no reason, or stare too long at a word until it unravels, we are reminded he is there. He always has been. Far to the east of Windhelm, where the land grows cold in ways beyond weather, where the stones themselves forget warmth and the winds carry no scent, there lies a crevice known only to the oldest of hunters, narrow and breathing steam even in midwinter. It is called Thought Hollow in the old tongue. A wound in the world, they say, caused not by blade or quake, but by an idea too sharp to be born. They say the snow around it refuses to fall evenly, spiraling inward, like thought unraveling into dream. And at its base, behind a veil of mist, there lies a single book, unbound, unread, unopened. It is always there, and always different. Some who descend into the hollow see pages filled with laughter, scribbled in curling ink. Others see only mirrors, page after page of their own face, but each one slightly turned as if listening to something behind them. One man emerged with the book etched into his skin, wordless, but warm to the touch. Another was never seen again, but his voice lingered on the wind for 3 days, speaking only questions. Was I always? Is it still me? Is he listening through my mouth? Nordic seers claim this book is Sheogorath's ledger, not of sins or souls, but of forgotten decisions. The moments in life when a person almost changed, but did not. The doubts, never spoken. The choices, never made. And when he reads from it, the mad god does not judge. He simply waits. For each page turned, a mask is made, to be worn later by someone else, somewhere else, when the world is once again uncertain. In the painted caves of the Argonians, deep within the swamps where hist roots coil like memory, there is a mural unlike the others. Most depict change, life, song, war, but one stretches the length of an entire wall, made only of smiles, hundreds, thousands, some sharp, some kind, some too wide, some with eyes, some that continue beyond the face. It is known as the wall that smiles when alone. When viewed by torchlight, it appears flat, but in the dark, when seen only by echo and instinct, it pulses. The elders say it was not painted. It emerged. One night, the pigment simply rearranged itself, and those who sleep near it often wake with paint on their teeth. No one speaks of removing it. They say it's a gift, or a warning, or perhaps a face that dreams of being worn. The Hiss do not comment, but the trees nearby bend in directions that wind cannot explain. Among the Ashlanders of Morrowind, it is believed that there once walked a man with no shadow, not because he lacked soul, but because his shadow had left him, wandering the world in his stead. This man, they say, did not speak, but everyone who heard him knew what he meant. His presence was accompanied by ringing, not loud but endless, a sound like a cracked bell behind thought. He would sit beside fires, stare into the coals, and cry tears that turned to ink. They say he was Sheogorath made flesh for a single lifetime, to see whether madness could wear mortality without unraveling. When he died, the winds around his grave began to whisper in rhymes that made no sense, yet hurt when heard. Pilgrims sometimes visit the cairn, not to pray, but to listen, to lose something. A fear, a truth, a memory. One woman claimed she left her grief there and returned empty, not healed, but hollow, and somehow she was grateful. In a ruined tower along the coast of Anvil, one that does not always appear in the same place, there is a stair that leads only downward. There is no bottom, only the sense of descent. Each step becomes harder to remember. Each wall begins to shimmer, not with light, but with uncertainty. At a certain depth, language fails, not through silence, but through inversion. Words change meaning, thoughts loop, time resists. This tower has no record, no maps. Yet sailors see it sometimes at dawn, just before waking. They speak of dreams in which they descend the stair endlessly, only to awaken with sand in their boots and a taste of stone. It is called the Tower of Doubt, and is believed by some to be the spine of Sheogorath himself. Or rather, the idea of him descending forever into what comes before belief. The Redguard sages tell a tale of a sword forged without intention. No smith, no fire, no forge. It simply was discovered lying across the chest of a man who had never existed. The blade bears no edge, yet cuts memory. Those who draw it forget why they did. Those struck by it lose not blood, but self. Whole pieces of history vanish in its wake. The sword is named Regret, and is said to have been made from a piece of Sheogorath's silence, the pause between truth and madness, hardened into steel. The sword now resides, hidden in a shrine with no god, no offerings, no pilgrims, just the sound of weeping stone. It is not guarded, it is avoided. For those who seek it rarely return, and when they do, they walk as though chasing their own shadows, never quite catching up. There is a story told in fragments across the scattered archives of Tamriel, in forgotten footnotes, cracked tablets, and margin scrawlings of a name that can only be heard by those who do not believe in names. A name that is not a word, but a gesture, performed in the heart. It is said this name once belonged to Sheogorath, before he was Sheogorath, when he was merely a thought that didn't know it was a god. Those who find this name, and they are few, are said to change. Not visibly, not suddenly, but over time, gently, like stone eroded by breath. They begin to question not the world, but the questions themselves. They begin to forget why they ever needed answers, and in this way, they become closer, not to Sheogorath, but to possibility itself. And perhaps that is his truest realm, not the Shivering Isles, not the mask, not the scream, but the possible. The moment just before something becomes what it is. The flicker, the choice, the breath before the plunge. He is the breath that never finishes. There is a stretch of tundra in the pale, north of Dawnstar, where snow falls in spirals rather than sheets. The sky above it is not darker, nor stranger, but something in the wind whispers not with voice, but with rhythm. Travelers speak of footsteps continuing after they've stopped, of their own shadows hesitating to follow. The place has no path, yet those who walk it feel they are retracing something, not steps but thoughts. They call it Whim's Edge, and old hermits claim it was a scar left behind, when Sheogorath laughed too deeply. and the land remembered. The silence here is peculiar, not absent, but active, filled with a presence that feels both amused and waiting. Some who sleep beneath its sky dream of conversations they cannot remember, but wake with a sense of having agreed to something. The frost there forms not in crystal, but in spirals, like thoughts curling in on themselves. A scholar once tried to map the winds. Her charts dissolved into laughter, ink running upward. She left her instruments behind and wandered into the whiteness, speaking softly to the air. Her final journal entry read, "He asked if I was finished being myself." There is a ruin beneath the sands of Alika, ancient, circular, its stones polished not by time, but by thought. The Yokudans who once walked its halls believed it to be a temple to a god of contradictions, though they never spoke his name aloud. They carved riddles into every surface, doors that only open when you no longer wish to pass through, walls that speak when touched, floors that rearrange underfoot. The central chamber contains only a mirror, shattered into perfect pieces, none missing, none aligned. It is said that if one stands at the center and closes their eyes, they will see their truest self and understand why they must forget it. This ruin is known in fragmented texts as the eye below sand. It is not buried. The sand simply chooses to hide it, shifting aside only for those who arrive without maps and without questions. Redguard poets say it is a wound made by Sheogorath when he tried to build a circle that had no center, and in doing so, broke not geometry but certainty. In a hidden glade south of Bravil, deep within a thicket where the trees curve inward like listening ears, lies a pond that does not reflect. Its waters are black, not from depth, but from refusal. No birds sing here, no crickets hum. Yet the air is not still, it shivers. This pond is called Hollow Mirror by those who have found it, though none remember how they did. It is said the pond is where Sheogorath first forgot his own face, and thus began to invent new ones. Legends say that on certain nights, the surface of the water moves, not from wind, but from breath. Slow, rhythmic, unseen. A priest of Mara once tried to bless the pond. He returned with a smile and no memory of his purpose. He wrote poetry in salts, spoke in riddles to bees, and wept at dawn for reasons he could never recall. He never returned to his temple. He said the pond showed him something he had not yet become. In a corner of the Shivering Isles itself, a place even maps of madness dare not mark, there stands a doorway with no hinges, no frame, no wall. Just the door suspended in air, always slightly ajar. It leads nowhere, and yet all things have passed through it. The bones of butterflies, the dreams of stars, the sorrow of a god. The doorway is called the Invitation, and it is said that it opens wider only when forgotten. Those who step through it, and they are few, do not vanish. They change. Some return speaking in opposites. Some remember futures that never happened. One man came back entirely reversed, wearing his name like a mask inside out. He whispered only once. He is not behind the door, he is the hinge. In certain secluded schools of alteration, hidden in mountain libraries and clouded towers, students are taught a forbidden exercise, to doubt the shape of reality so deeply that it begins to rearrange. This is not illusion, this is unbelief. It is said that Sheogorath discovered the principle of disbelief not by rejecting the world, but by loving it too much, until it melted, reshaped, and began to speak in return. These students, if they succeed, are said to see cracks in all things. Not flaws, but possibilities. The grain of wood becomes a map. The wrinkle in a page sings. The wind stutters, as if trying to remember a different sky, and through these cracks, Sheogorath peers, not to break, but to suggest. His power is not in forcing madness, but in showing how thin sanity was to begin with. There is an ancient flute, hidden in the ruin of a forgotten bard's college near Daggerfall, carved from an unknown bone and wrapped in pages of blank parchment. It plays not melodies but moments. Each note draws forth a memory. The listener never lived. A mother's sigh, a funeral rain, a kiss in a city that no longer exists. The music is not sad, nor joyful. It is aware. The bard who played it last wrote only this: "I remembered something that never happened, and missed it terribly." The flute is believed to have been given by Sheogorath as a gift to the first lyre, not to punish, but to celebrate. For lies, he said, are simply truths wearing better clothes. And music? Music is the lie that makes the silence bearable. In the basements of the Arcane University, in vaults sealed with sigils no one understands, there is a room where candles burn without flame. Shadows in that room fall in opposite directions. Time skips. Ink refuses to dry. The room is known only to a few senior scholars and is called the room between paragraphs. They say it was created by Sheogorath during a pause in a lecture, a single breath too long, a thought left hanging. It was not built, it formed, as all things do, when meaning stumbles. In that room, spells cast themselves. Questions answer the wrong mouths. One student entered seeking knowledge and emerged fluent in birdsong and silence. He teaches now, though he never writes on the board. He simply speaks, and understanding blooms like moss, quiet, slow, and not entirely human. And so the mad god lingers, not in thunder, not in chaos, but in the hush between intention and accident. In the moment when thought falters and the self steps aside, he is the pause in the symphony, the skipped beat, the misplaced thread that somehow holds the whole tapestry together. He is not what you expect. He is what comes just before the expecting ends. In the heart of the Dragontail Mountains, nestled among jagged stone like a splinter in the world's palm, there is a shrine that cannot be reached by path or sky. No cartographer has charted it. No bird soars above it. Yet it exists, or perhaps remembers existing. Called the Shrine of the Breathless Hour in obscure Hamophilian codices, it is described only in absence. An altar of cracked obsidian, surrounded by 12 stone chairs, none ever filled. Each chair is carved with a single symbol, a mask, a mirror, a flame, turned upside down. The air there is thick with stillness, not peace, nor fear, but a pause that refuses to end. Those who have written of it claim that time folds inward near the altar, not backwards, not forwards, but around, a ring of halted memory. You do not age there, you do not speak, you simply feel your thoughts stretch thin, as if being examined from the inside. The Redguard mystics who studied it named it a place where Sheogorath forgot to finish laughing, and so the world, unsure of the punchline, never moved on. In Cyrodiil, in the ruins of a pre-Rayman amphitheatre, lost to bramble and fog, there lies an artifact buried beneath layers of cracked stageboards and silent dust, known only as the Forgotten Prop. It is an object with no discernible form. To some, it appears as a broken lute string, to others, a single slipper made for no foot. One scholar recorded seeing a child's drawing of an unknown constellation, while her companion saw only a quill bleeding sand. It is believed this object, or presence, was once part of a play written by Sheogorath himself, performed before an audience of statues. The performance was so perfect in its madness, so pure in its contradiction, that the script dissolved, leaving only the intent, so the prop remains, still acting, still waiting for its cue. Mages who attempt to remove it lose track of what they were holding. Actors who speak near it forget their lines, not by mistake, but by design. For in Sheogorath's theatre, the line is never what matters. It is the silence before the line, the anticipation, the possibility, the crumbling of order, just before creation. In distant Orsinium, among the oral legends rarely committed to parchment, there is a tale of the anvil that broke the blacksmith. It is not a tool, but an idea, a slab of iron inscribed with every name a person could have been. Not names as given, but names as potential. When a blacksmith struck it, it did not shape metal, but memory. His hammer echoed with futures that never came to pass, and his hands began to forget how to hold what they had always known. In time, he stopped forging weapons and began crafting questions, blades that did not cut, but consider. The anvil, according to the tale, was left behind by a figure wrapped in yellow parchment, with eyes like hourglasses and breath that smelled of thunder and honey. The blacksmith never asked his name. He simply nodded and wept as he accepted the gift. When asked, years later, what the anvil had taught him, he replied only, "Some truths sharpen backwards." Near the coastline of Black Marsh, on a stretch of land that refuses to stay still on any map, lies a garden that grows only from forgotten seeds. It blooms with plants known to no catalogue, petals shaped like sighs, stems that twist inward, thorns made of glass. The Argonians call it surreal, or the blooming that shouldn't. It is said the garden appears only when someone dreams of a flower they've never seen before. A subtle bargain, imagination exchanged for witness. Those who walk the garden find that time does not move. It unfolds, a vine blooms, withers, and regrows within the blink of a thought. Fragrance changes with each breath. Some flowers sing, some listen. All are sacred, for the garden is believed to be Sheogorath's memory of what could have grown, plants from forgotten worlds, futures untaken, the flora of unreality. When it rains, the droplets fall up, and in the stillness you can almost hear the mad god humming to himself, a lullaby for seeds that never asked to bloom. From ancient Dwemer texts, recovered beneath Befaft, comes mention of an artifact labelled only D32 Mem Nolel, a cube that, when held, causes a moment of perfect certainty, followed by complete doubt. Those who touch it recall an overwhelming sense of clarity, as if every question ever asked had been answered at once. Then, as quickly as it comes, it is gone, and what remains is the echo of that clarity, a hunger for a truth that cannot be named. The cube cannot be opened, it cannot be destroyed, its material resists all classification, and it hums with a rhythm that matches no known measurement of time. The tonal architects who once studied it concluded that it was a gift from a being outside of sequence. One engineer scrawled a final note before vanishing. He didn't bring the answer. He brought the shape of an answer. I was not ready to wear it. In the monasteries of the far north, where wind sculpts prayer into ice and bells chime without hands, there exists a tradition among the old priests of marking silence. With ink, blank scrolls are hung from rafters, each representing a silence that changed someone. One scroll, the oldest and most revered, is rumored to have been inspired not by divine revelation, but by a laugh heard deep beneath the stone, a laugh that did not disturb the quiet, but defined it. These monks say that Sheogorath is not the god of madness. He is the god of reverent dissonance, the pause that makes the music holy, the disruption that invites reinterpretation. The blank scroll, they say, teaches better than the written one, for in its emptiness, it allows the reader to find what they fear to write, and so his influence stretches on, in echo, in breath, in half-forgotten gestures. He does not seek devotion, he seeks engagement. He invites the soul not to kneel, but to unravel, gently, curiously, without shame. His altar is the uncertain moment before a decision. His shrine is the mind caught in dream. He waits where meaning is born, not to steal it, but to remind you it was never fixed. In the western valleys of High Rock, where fog gathers thick over sleeping moors and ruins whisper beneath the soil, there is a stone circle hidden from all maps. The Gipolv upright pillars of moss-worn granite stand in an uneven ring, their surfaces smooth on one side, jagged on the other, like the teeth of some long-forgotten idea. In the center lies a flat slate altar, untouched by time, upon which no lichen grows. The Bretons call this place the Circle of Unmaking, though no record speaks of its building. It simply was, as if exhaled from the ground itself. Those who enter the circle find their footsteps softening, as though the air resists memory. Voices falter, thoughts wander. The stones are warm even in snow, and the space between them feels stretched, as though time itself has paused in curiosity. It is said Sheogorath once stood there, neither invoked nor worshipped, but wondered at, not as god, nor force, but as question, a question so immense, the ground itself could not answer. The people of the region speak cautiously of the circle. They say that those who sit upon the altar sometimes weep without knowing why, or laugh with such sweetness it breaks their own hearts. One old tale tells of a child who wandered into the stones and emerged aged, smiling, with stars in her eyes and moss growing from her palms. She never spoke again, but wrote dreams in charcoal that no fire could burn. Far to the south, in the tangled jungles of Valenwood, lies a glade where no bird sings, and no insect stirs. Beneath a canopy of leaves so dense they seem carved from shadow, there grows a single tree wide as a house, tall as a mountain in slumber. Its bark is the color of dusk, and its leaves shimmer faintly, like thought drifting towards sleep. This tree is known as root in reverse, and the Bosmer say it grows away from time, shedding not leaves, but memories, drifting down like snow that melts before it touches. Elders speak of root in reverse as the place where Sheogorath once buried an hour he no longer wanted. A moment too full, a thought too sharp. The tree took it, and now blooms with forgetting. Those who sit beneath it find their burdens lifted, not erased, but distanced, as though remembered from another life. Hunters have entered the glade and returned with new names. A warrior left her rage beneath its boughs and became a poet. One lover returned alone, smiling faintly, speaking only, "It was never truly mine, was it?" In old Dunmer funerary texts, written in the margins of House Telvanni scrolls, there is mention of a ritual long forbidden, the unbecoming. It is a ceremony not of death, but of unraveling, a willing surrender, of all titles, memories, and roles. The ritual requires no tools, no altars, only a space between mirrors and a name never spoken aloud. It is said that those who perform it vanish from history, their reflections walking onward without them. The scrolls claim the rite was taught in a whisper, by a god cloaked in motes of laughter and sorrow, who said only, "You may stop pretending now." Those who have studied this rite believe it is not destruction, but a gift, Sheogorath's ultimate offering, to step beyond all masks, even the one called self. Not madness, but release, a shedding of the burden of identity, of continuity, of narrative. To unbecome is not to die, it is to be unwritten, gently, reverently, by a hand that's seen every ending and chosen none. In the ruins beneath Gideon, sunken under layers of swamp and stone, there lies a vault known as the Archivist's Lament. Its walls are carved not with language, but with breath, shallow grooves in stone that respond only when exhaled upon. When touched, they hum. When wept upon, they sing. The Argonians say the vault was built by a historian who sought to record what could not be spoken, grief without cause, joy without object, the shape of questions that had no edge. It is believed Sheogorath visited this vault not to desecrate it, but to complete it. He brought no pen, no words, only silence, and in that silence the vault accepted its own forgetting. Now when one enters, they find their thoughts mirrored on the walls, not as words but as warmth, as colour, as size, and when they leave, they take nothing with them, save a sense that something remembered them. In the caves beneath the Hrothgarian mountains, there is a river that flows without source. It emerges from solid stone, cold and unyielding, and winds only a short distance before vanishing into a crevice too narrow for light. The orcs call it the word stream, for when the water flows, it whispers phrases no two listeners hear the same. Some hear apologies, others, poems. A few claim the river once said their true name, not the one given but the one meant, and in that moment they changed. Legends say the word stream was Sheogorath's experiment, to see if meaning could exist without intention, to craft language so free it could find its own speaker. A bard once camped beside it for a year, transcribing the river's murmurs. When he left, he had no voice, but his writing glowed faintly, and when read aloud, caused the reader to forget the last thing they feared. The river flows still, only when unobserved. In a forgotten province marked on no imperial charter, where the stars above seem slightly misaligned, and the moon always watches sideways, there is a village that never ends its stories. The villagers tell tales without conclusion, beginnings nested within middles, middles that echo forward and backward, endings that never quite arrive. A tale of a bird that sings before it's born, a well that drinks from you, a man who buries his shadow to keep it warm. No one remembers when the village began. Some say it has always been there. Others believe it appears to those who stop looking for destinations. It is known as Whisper Settle, and its people claim that Sheogorath visits them often, though no one agrees on his face. To some he is a flame that dances without heat. To others, a child who asks questions you almost remember the answers to. He never stays. He never leaves. He unhappens. And so, through dream and ruin, laughter and lament, the mad god continues, not as chaos incarnate, but as the quiet murmur beneath becoming. He is the hand that rearranges the mosaic, not by force, but by invitation. Not to destroy, but to remind us that we are never finished. He is the breath behind the curtain, the blink between memories, the presence that asks, what if you didn't have to be what you thought you were? In the deepest archives of Somerset, where scrolls are bound in silence and the candles flicker without flame, there is a sealed chamber called the Chamber of Inverted Questions. It is accessible only to the most senior of scholars, and only then when they forget why they came. Inside, the walls do not reflect sound, but consume it, and the floor is marked with a spiral etched so finely it cannot be seen, only felt. At the center sits a desk of translucent stone, upon which rests a single quill, untouched, unwielded and forever writing. The words it inscribes are unreadable, not because the ink is flawed, but because the language belongs to no tongue. Its meaning is emotion, shaped into loops and hooks. The high elves who maintain the records say the chamber was not built, but offered, and that the quill has always been there, writing the thoughts of the world before they have been thought. They do not speak of Sheogorath in this context. They only say the room is sacred, and should never be entered with questions that already have answered. There is a legend, kept only in the footnotes of ancient mythic grimoires, that Sheogorath once tried to teach the stars how to blink, not to make them less eternal, but more approachable, to show them that even constellations need moments of uncertainty. For a single night, it is said, the sky above Nirn shimmered with hesitation, the warrior flickered, the serpent turned in upon itself, the mage traced a spiral that led nowhere, and in that stillness, the mad god wept, not from sadness, but from joy, that even the stars could forget themselves, if only for a moment. From that night forward, astronomers in Hammerfell report a single anomaly, a star that moves when unobserved. It defies mapping, and those who track it find their notes reversed, their instruments humming without cause. They call it the laughing star, and while it grants no power, those who study it often leave their disciplines behind. One became a dancer, another a dream interpreter. One simply wandered east, searching for a sky that did not remember him. In the far reaches of elsewhere, beyond the dunes where sand sings and moon sugar crystals bloom in the dark, there lies a ruin half buried in sleep. The Khajiit call it Yizian Dar, the House of Soft Lies. It is not a temple, nor a palace. It is a home, they say, that belongs to no one, yet welcomes all who arrive without memory. Within its walls, the rooms change shape to match the stories not yet told. A hallway that leads to your first mistake. A cupboard that smells of someone you forgot to forgive. A window that shows only where you've never been. The Main himself once wrote of Yizian Dar, though only a metaphor. He called it the place where Sheogorath's whiskers touch the edge of true mercy. For in this house, nothing is mocked, nothing is punished. Everything simply is, and is allowed to be broken. The Khajiit believe it is where Sheogorath stores the sadnesses too small to be remembered by gods, but too deep to be carried by mortals. And when he visits, he does not laugh. He listens. In forgotten corners of the imperial city, behind the walls that once trembled beneath the tribunal's diplomacy and the empire's gold, there exists a staircase that leads only downward, yet never grows closer to the earth. It is known among silent circles, the descent without distance. It is said that each step is an emotion once denied, and that the act of walking becomes a mirror, reflecting not where you go, but what you avoid. Those who have descended long speak of voices that do not echo, but remember. At the bottom, if such a thing exists, there is said to be a chamber with a single chair, facing away from the door. No one who enters sees who sits there, but all report the same thing. They feel watched with gentle disappointment. Not judgment, not hatred, only the sorrow of someone who once believed in you more than you believed in yourself. It is believed this place is not of Sheogorath's creation, but of his compassion, a space for mortals to witness their most quiet failures and choose whether to carry them forward. In the writings of an unnamed Suijic monk, preserved only through oral recitation, There exists a meditation designed to bring the practitioner to the edge of unbeing. It involves 7 breaths, each tied to a memory, and the speaking of a word that no longer means anything. If performed at midnight, beneath stars veiled by cloud, it is said that the world shifts slightly. Not enough to be seen, but enough to be felt. Walls lean, water thickens, birds forget their songs mid-flight. The monk never named the source of the meditation, only that it came to him, in a dream, in the shape of a coin that could only land on its edge. He said the god who gave it to him did not smile, but wore a silence, so complete it changed the meaning of light. The Pujiks refer to this entity only as he who makes the question whole. They do not pray to him, they do not study him, they simply leave a space for him in every ritual, a silence, never explained. And in these places, in these stories, the pattern emerges, not in lines or signs, but in spaces between. Sheogorath does not demand. He does not destroy. He reminds. He reveals what was always there, hidden by our certainty. A mirror not to our madness, but to our refusal to be whole. He is not the god of chaos. He is the god of completion without closure, the sentence without a final word. The bell that rings once, then never again, because it never had to. Beyond the frost-warm peaks of the Jaral Mountains, in a place where avalanches once carried away both stone and story, there lies a hollow in the world that has no true name. It is whispered of in the private journals of mountain hermits and in the half-faded notes of mad cartographers, those who map not land but absence. They speak of a valley carved not by glacier or wind, but by the weight of a forgotten thought. They call it the Folded Veil, where echoes linger longer than their source, and memory decays into song. The snow there does not melt, yet it never falls. It simply is, unmoved, unchanging, as though placed deliberately, like the cloth over a sleeping face. The wind does not howl, but hums a low, almost tuneless murmur, like a lullaby hummed by someone who does not remember who it's for. And in the center of the veil lies a structure not built but gathered, a ring of doors, each different, none of which lead anywhere but inward. It is said Sheogorath spent a night here, though the moons showed no light, and time dared not mark his passing. He walked in circles, opening each door, finding behind everyone not madness, but possibility. A throne of salt, a child laughing underwater, a mirror that blinked first, and in the middle of the circle, he left behind a spool of red thread, tied to none of them. It frayed at both ends. It led nowhere. It was perfect. In ancient Khmer glyphs discovered beneath the ruins of an exiled Vilathi shrine, there exists a passage that translates only loosely. Where the god stepped, silence followed. Not because the world feared him, but because it longed to listen. The priests who studied the glyphs claimed the shrine had no deity, no statues, only a pool of glass-smooth water and walls that sloped inward like the cupped hands of a forgotten saint. The shrine is thought to have been dedicated, not to a god, but to a moment too strange, too holy, to name. A time when Sheogorath did not laugh, nor speak, nor sing. He simply was, and the world, confused, chose to stop. For a breath. For an age. For however long silence needed to understand itself. And from that moment came the truth, that is written in no scroll, taught in no temple, that not all madness is noise. Some is stillness so deep, it rearranges me. In the pocket realms between realms, among spaces not formed by Oblivion's usual shape, but by refusal to conform, to settle, to be named. There exists a corridor lined with paintings, none of them framed, none hung upon walls. They simply float, each facing slightly away from the viewer, each canvas painted with a moment that never happened, yet feels deeply familiar. This place is known to very few, and only spoken of in metaphor, the Gallery of Almost, a space, it is said, Sheogorath created not for amusement, but out of longing. Each painting is a choice, unmade, a life never lived, a sentence stopped halfway, a door not opened. The gallery stretches endlessly, but always returns to its beginning, though no one has ever seen the first image. One dendrologist wrote, I wept before a portrait of my daughter, though I've never had a child, and she wept too. And perhaps this is the heart of his realm, not chaos, but hesitation. The sacred pause before transformation. Not destruction, but the mystery of what wasn't. Sheogorath does not collect madness as a curio. He tends it like a garden pruning, seeding, allowing contradiction to bloom. For what is madness but the moment when truth becomes too large for the mind to carry whole? In the damp ivy-choked ruins of an Aelide observatory, its name lost to war and weather, there is a broken instrument still aimed at the sky. Not a telescope, nor a scrying glass, but a bowl carved from meteoric glass, etched with constellations that do not match the stars above. Scholars have puzzled over its purpose. It reflects no light. It bends no vision. But once, during an eclipse, a historian stood too close and claimed to hear his own voice, asking a question he had not yet thought of. The Aelides, it is said, once believed that Sheogorath ruled not from a throne, but from within every contradiction they could not name. He was not their god, but their interruption, their sacred doubt, the flicker in their divine pattern. And so they built this instrument, not to see beyond, but to listen inward. It is silent now, but on nights when the moons cross paths, it hums faintly, and shadows move without source. Far beneath the surface of Vardenfell, deep in volcanic passages, untouched since the days of Red Mountain's last great fury, there is a mural etched into black stone. It shows no figures, no story, only a spiral of masks, dozens, maybe hundreds, each slightly different, each etched with a single expression, almost recognition. No one knows who carved it. No one knows what it depicts, but it pulses faintly, and those who stand before it too long begin to shift their posture, mirroring one mask after another, until they lose track of which face was originally their own. The Ashlanders, when asked, shake their heads. They say only, "It is the place where he puts the faces he isn't using," and in that answer is perhaps the closest thing to understanding that Sheogorath is not one mask, but the invitation to wear many. That identity, like laughter, need not be owned to be sacred. That to try on the impossible is not sin, but worship. And still he walks, not in fury or spectacle, but in the cracks between belief. He is not the storm. He is the space the storm forgets to fill. The God who speaks when you doubt and falls silent when you are sure. Not to mock, not to deceive, but to leave room for the truth that cannot be spoken directly. He is not waiting. He is already there, in the next breath. In the empty corridors beneath the white gold tower, deeper than any scholar dares map, and lower than any light remembers, there is a hall known only in whispered conjecture, the Hall of Unnamed Bells. No records place it there, no plans account for its stone, but the echoes that rise from beneath the elder council chambers carry with them a rhythm too structured to be chants, and too sorrowful to be mechanical. It is said that the bells do not ring to mark time, but to mourn its passage, and that each toll is for a moment that was never allowed to arrive. No two visitors hear the same sound. Some report a soft chime like glass cracking under frost. Others swear it is a child's voice carried on wind through bone. One Septim archivist wrote that he heard silence so profound it rang louder than thunder. He resigned his post the next day and became a keeper of forgotten roads, carrying no name. He left behind a single line: "He tolls not for death, but for what we refuse to let live." The Altmer of old believed that time was not a river, but a choir, a harmony of potential threads, each voice singing its own melody until it collided with another, and in this harmony, they feared the disharmony, the sudden shift, the unexpected verse, the singer who arrived uninvited and changed the key. They had a name for this figure, older than Sheogorath, yet echoing his shape, Daerantir, he who smiles beneath structure he did not disrupt by force. He arrived as a note that made all others question their place in the chord. They built a lattice of crystal atop a high mountain in response, not to worship but to contain. It resonated with fixed tones, built to repel the god who offered difference. But one year, when the moons split apart like twin thoughts forgetting each other, the lattice hummed a tone not in its design. It sang in discord, and in that moment, the entire mountain was lost, not destroyed, but simply unrecorded. No ruins remain, no maps ever marked it, only memory and the distant sound of bells no hand has ever struck. Among the ancient Lebanese tribes, who once lived in reed palaces along the water's edge, there is a tale passed only from elder to elder. It tells of a bridge that once crossed no river, but a motion, a bridge not made of stone or wood, but of feeling woven so tightly it could bear weight. The bridge was a gift, they say, left by a figure who wore no crown, but whose eyes shimmered like ideas half forgotten. He built it not to connect two places, but two people who had never spoken, yet dreamed of the same silence. They crossed, slowly, unsure, and in the center of the bridge, they wept, not because they had found each other, but because the bridge reminded them they were never apart. The next morning, the bridge was gone. The villagers rebuilt it every year, out of reeds and song, but it never held weight again. It had never needed to. Sheogorath, in this tale, is not the god of madness, but of completion by accident. The emotion that builds a path between souls, unnoticed, until it is already crossed. The whisper between strangers that says, "I've always known you," though the words are never spoken. The madness of connection too fragile to survive knowledge. In an eyelid reliquary beneath the ruins of Miskarkand, unearthed during an excavation that ended in silence and forgotten names, a single object remains intact. A sphere, no larger than a fist, carved from ivory that bleeds faint gold in candlelight. It spins endlessly, though untouched. Attempts to stop it result in confusion, nausea, and a deep sense of having committed a betrayal no one can name. The sphere has been called the still question by those who study it, though none agree on its function. It emits no power, speaks no language, but exerts intention. Those who gaze into it feel watched, not by a presence, but by a future that knows they're out. One scholar recorded that, after 3 days with the sphere, he could no longer tell the difference between what he had done and what he had meant to do. He left his work behind and joined a remote monastery, stating, "He taught me that meaning is a verb, not a truth." In the deepest dreams of the hist, beyond sap and root and the slow memory of leaf and tide, there exists a flicker, not of fire, but of possibility. The Argonian dream speakers call it surreal, the bloom that does not grow. It is not a vision, but a potential, a way the world might have been, glimpsed only when all other paths are forgotten. When an Argonian sleeps beneath certain stars, and their blood slows to rhythm with the river, they sometimes see a stranger in the dream, not a god, but a shape, laughing softly, weaving roots from air. They do not fear him. They do not revere him. They call him the root of questions, and say he is older than the hist but younger than breath. He offers no guidance, only interruption, no truth, only reminder. He is the leaf that changes color too soon, the whisper that rustles a sleeping thought. He is Sheogorath, not the Lord of the Isles, but the reflection in still water when you turn your back. And through all these echoes, all these reflections, he endures. Not because he is needed, but because he is always present where need and doubt intersect. He is not a god who waits in temple halls. He does not demand flame or offering. He walks in the spaces we abandon. He speaks through the words we nearly say. He is the invitation at the edge of every decision. He is the mask, not worn. He is the echo that becomes its own origin. In the southernmost swamps of Blackwood, where lantern light drowns in mist and the ground no longer remembers firmness, there lies a village that breathes. It has no name, no path leading to it, no stone to mark its birth. It appears only when forgotten, a cluster of huts built from reed, shadow, and reflection. The Argonians who dream of this place call it Thliel Vor, the place that wakes when memory sleeps. There the air tastes of copper and quiet, and the trees weep, dew at dusk, as though mourning for something that never lived. The village is inhabited not by people, but by moments. Moments that walk, that speak, that sit beside visitors and offer them pieces of their own memory, rearranged. A song you never learned, but somehow remember. A scent from a childhood that was never yours. A wound that aches with no scar. It is said that this place was not made by Sheogorath, but dreamed by him. A sanctuary for the things no other realm would hold. the remnants of discarded days and untaken paths, all cradled in a hush too wide for understanding. And in the center of the village lies a small pool, dark as the void between stars. It reflects nothing. Not face, not sky, not flame. Those who peer into it do not see but feel an ache, a flicker, a question with no words. The elders say the pool is where the mad god rests his mind, not in chaos, but in stillness, a place where even madness must stop and listen. Further north, among the broken altars of the Oblivion highlands, a ruin stands known as the Pillar of False Divinity. It is not tall nor grand, merely a single column, broken at the top, engraved with hundreds of names that never belonged to anyone. Names like Ash Sleeper and the Eighth Answer and He Who Swallowed Time. No histories reference them, no bloodlines traced to them, and yet the names persist, etched clean and fresh, as if rewritten Nike. The myth that surrounds this pillar speaks of a game played once by Sheogorath and an unknown god, a game of identity where the loser would be named, and thus bound, but the mad god, clever in the ways of untruth, lost on purpose, and in doing so, filled the pillar with the names he never wanted. Now the column serves as monument to the unbearable weight of being understood. Those who spend too long near it often forget their own name, not by spell but by choice, as though the nearness of so many false names unmakes the need for their true one. Among the Dunmirashlands, where soot coats every breath and the wind weeps through the bones of ruined cantons, there is an old tale of a mask that does not hide, but reveals. Crafted of chitin, pearl, and dust, it is said to show not the face of the wearer, but the face of the one who broke them. The mask bears no eyes, only a crack across the cheek, like a silent laugh caught in a wince. The wise call it the mask of morning joy. It is believed Sheogorath gifted this mask to a tribunal priest who had forgotten how to doubt. The mask taught him laughter, not mirthful, but wounded, and in that sound, the priest remembered every lie he told himself in the name of divinity. He removed his robes, dropped his staff, and wandered into the ash. The mask, some say, still roams, worn by no one, yet visible to those ready to see what they have hidden from themselves. In the deeper halls of Apocrypha, where books breathe and pages bleed meaning, there is a tome sealed not by chain or lock, but by laughter. A laughter written into the very parchment, wild, sharp, sacred. The book bears no title, only a mark, a spiral of ink coiled into a single tear. Hermaeus Mora keeps the tome on raid, not out of fear, but respect. For it is said the words inside do not teach, but undo, that they were written by Sheogorath himself, as a love letter to forget. The tome is rumoured to contain no spells, no prophecies, only unwords. Sentences that unmake the rules of speech. Grammar that erodes certainty. Readers who attempt to decipher it report feeling language itself come apart beneath them. Not painfully, but with gentle wonder. One seeker spent a decade staring at its cover, only to whisper, "I finally remember what I was before I was taught to think." Then he vanished, leaving behind only silence and a single word scratched into stone. Free. Deep within the Shivering Isles, beyond the tines of memory and across the sallow hills, lies a door set into the earth. It has no frame, no handle, no hinge, only a keyhole shaped like a question mark. The door is known as the Invitation, and it is not meant to be opened, only considered. It appears to travellers in moments of stillness, when they sit beside a stream too long, when they forget where they were walking, when their dreams run out of colour. Sheogorath, it is said, built this door not as a portal, but as a pivot, a moment in thought where one might choose not to go further, but to go sideways, to diverge not from path, but from expectation. Some who see the door return changed, not mad, but more complete, in their confusion, as if the unanswered question was the answer they had needed all along. And still he wanders, not across the land, but through impulse, the flicker before decision, the breath before regret. Sheogorath is not present in thunder or fire, but in the hush after thunder, the pause before fire. He lives in the moment the mind almost says no, and instead wonders what if. He is the laughter that mourns, the sorrow that sings, the madness that remembers what truth has forgotten. In the narrow divide between dusk and dawn, where light forgets its shape and shadow begins to hum with old breath, there is a stretch of land in Cyrodiil, known only by those who have walked it in dream, a vale neither mapped nor claimed. It appears as a soft incline woven with tall, golden grasses that sway without wind, whispering in a tongue older than Nirn. The Nebanese mystics call it throat of the echo, for sound behaves strangely there, arriving before it is made, or not at all. It is said Sheogorath once lay upon this hill, arms open wide, as if embracing the sky, not as a god, but as a forgotten child. He stayed for 3 days, unmoving, as the stars wheeled overhead and the moons traded places in solemn confusion. The grass beneath him grew white, and where his body pressed into the earth, it sang, not with voice, but with remembrance. Those who kneel there still say they hear something, a name they once carried before birth, or a song they almost sang as children. The sound brings no clarity, only tears. Far beneath Eleanor, in the oldest buried districts where Aedra and Daedra once danced in dialectic silence, there lies a circular chamber of broken mirrors. Each pane reflects not the self, but the other, the version of the viewer shaped by unspoken thought. One scholar saw herself as a bird made of ink, another as a child holding an hourglass that spilled stars instead of sand. The room has no entrance, no exit, only an invitation. Who are you when no one watches? The Altmere do not speak of this place, but the Psychics hint that it is a leftover fragment of Sheogorath's first descent into Mundus. Not an act of invasion, but of mirror, that the chamber was once a tool meant to remind mortals that identity is a function of forgetting, that to know who you are, you must also forget who you might have been, and that madness, in its deepest root, is not delusion, but too many truths at once. In the gorges of Skyrim's Reach, where the land fractures like old promises and the sky seems always just out of reach, there is a stone archway half sunken in the ground, carved with no glyphs and pointing to no path. The Forsworn call it the arch that regrets being built. They believe it is not a structure, but a wound in the world, a moment when intention faltered and was still allowed to persist. Those who walk beneath it speak of visions, a choice reversed, a lover not met, a life not taken. Some fall to their knees, others walk away in silence. One man, upon passing through, lost the ability to finish any sentence, not from curse, but because he no longer believed endings were necessary. He became a sculptor of unfinished statues, each one a gesture suspended mid-thought. There is a passage in a Third Era heretical text, attributed falsely to the school of Julianos, that speaks of the 7 silences. These are not gaps in sound, but moments when reality itself pauses, not broken, but contemplative. The 7th, it is written, belongs wholly to Sheogorath. It is called the silence between answers, and it is said to dwell in the heart of every question we do not truly wish to resolve. To reach this silence is to accept uncertainty as nourishment, a path not to clarity, but to intimacy with the unknown. The text was banned, its author vanished, but echoes of its phrasing still linger in obscure hymns and forbidden monastic chants, hummed by those who have glimpsed the world as it could be, rather than as it is told to be. In the southeastern coast of Tamriel, beyond the shattered remnants of Topol Bay's forgotten islands, stands a lighthouse that has never housed a flame, built from stone too dark to be quarried and too soft to be volcanic. It hums faintly in stormlight. The sailors call it the Tower of Lost Bearings. They do not anchor near it. They do not name it in logs. But when lost in fog, many claim they feel drawn toward it, not by hope, but by resignation. Within, the stairs spiral downward, though the tower rises. Rooms contain maps to places that never were, navigational charts written in tides of grief, and compasses that point only to the last place the bearer was happy. At its base is a single window that looks not out to sea, but into memory. Those who gaze through it often emerge older, quieter, changed not by what they saw but by what they remembered having forgotten. It is believed Sheogorath placed the tower there not to guide ships, but to catch the moment after purpose fades, when one is not lost but simply unmoored. A space not to correct course, but to let go of needing one. And in all these places, in stone and silence, in reflection and dissonance, he moves without moving. He does not claim temples. He does not demand chant. He reveals himself as pause, as reversal, as the comfort found in no longer pretending certainty. He is the mistake that teaches, the question that loves you enough not to answer, the God who stays behind after belief has passed. Beneath the waters of Lake Romare, far below the lapping shores and the glittering palaces of the white gold city, there rests a dome of seamless glass embedded in the lake bed, a structure never built by hands nor imagined in plan. Divivers who descend toward it find their breath slow, not from pressure, but from an unfamiliar calm, as though the water itself murmurs a lullaby in syllables too old for lungs. Scholars call it the quiet eye, though none agree on what it sees or remembers. Within the dome is no furniture, no altar, no relics, only a single floating symbol, a spiral of silver threads that never settle, slowly drifting in loops that never close. Some say it is a signature, others a snare, but those who approach describe the sensation, not of danger, but of permission. The sense that they may think thoughts they have long hidden from themselves. Thoughts not vile or wrong, but unwelcome in the daylight of identity. It is believed that Sheogorath, once weary of the clamour of belief and worship, descended to the lake and exhaled this place into being, not as sanctuary but as mirror, not for faces but that the truths we carry like burdens. Because no one told us we could set them down, and so the dome watches, not as eye but as heart. And in its reflection, we find not madness but the parts of ourselves that whisper softly in the quiet between names. In the ash-swept ruin of an abandoned ordinator hall in Mournhold, scorched during one of the forgotten temple schisms, there lies a book that cannot be opened, bound in resin and inked with no title. It is called by those who guard it the volume without pages. It is chained to no pedestal, protected by no enchantment, and yet it has resisted every effort to breach its cover. When pressed, priests simply say, "It contains what cannot be written." Whispers claim the book was a gift, not given in love nor jest, but in remembrance, a gift from Sheogorath to the tribunal, long ago, when the gods still debated what divinity meant. The book, it is said, contains the first lie told by a god to himself, not a deceit of power or doctrine, but of origin, a story invented so fully it became true, until it no longer could be distinguished from memory. And so, the book sealed itself, not to conceal, but to spare, for some truths are kindest when only half known. In Hammerfell's deep deserts, where sand sleeps in layers of forgotten war and cities vanish beneath the curve of dunes, travelers speak of a well that fills with starlight, only on nights when the moons turn pale and fall silent. The well has no bottom, no rope, no stone rim, only shadow. It is known among nomads as the well that speaks without voice, for when one peers in, they do not hear sound, but feel certainty unravel. Some claim they leave the well with new names. Others weep, though they know not why. One warrior stood beside the well for 7 nights, unmoving. When she turned away, she left her blade in the sand and walked east, barefoot, smiling as though relieved. It is said Sheogorath touched this place not to taint it, but to invite it, to coax into form the soft bewilderment that lives behind every answer given too quick. There is a scroll sealed beneath the floorboards of the old Mages' College in Coral that bears a single phrase, repeated endlessly down the page. I do not know, no signature, no embellishment, just a line, scribed in increasingly unstable hand, until the letters bend inward, like a thought turning upon itself. The Archmagister who found it vanished from all records shortly after, though the room he kept remains untouched, scented faintly of lilac and smoke. The scroll is believed to be the remnant of an encounter with the third face of Sheogorath, a guise not often written of, not the jester, not the tyrant, but the tutor who teaches by removing. He arrives not with riddles, but with mirrors that forget how to reflect. His lesson is not in confusion, but in stillness. the slow, quiet undoing of the need to define. In the Somerset hinterlands, where the towers of old falter into mist and time seems reluctant to continue, there is a grove where none may lie, not for fear of justice, but because the very air trembles when a word contradicts itself. This grove is called Truth's Exhaust. It is believed to be a fracture point between ideas too pure to coexist, a place where Sheogorath once brought 12 philosophers, each to argue a different truth. By dawn, none remained, only the grove, and a tree at its centre with 12 branches, each bending in a different direction, each leaf shaped like a question mark. The Ultima avoid this grove. They say it disrupts the harmony of intention. But the younger students of logic sometimes venture there, leaving behind scrolls with blank ink or essays written backward. One such scroll ended with the line, "There is freedom in not being right." And this perhaps is the deeper mystery of Sheogorath. Not that he mocks, but that he liberates. Not that he confounds, but that he reminds us how heavily we rely upon, knowing he is not the God of answers. He is the last breath before we stop needing them. He does not ask for loyalty. He does not reward faith. He offers release, not from pain, but from the pressure to name it. He is the guest who arrives when the mind begins to loosen its grip, the companion who walks with us not to guide, but to witness our wandering. In the caves beneath Necrom, where light forgets how to travel, and breath itself seems to echo with hesitation, there lies a winding passage known only in murmured tones as the corridor of folding thought. It is not marked on any map, not studied by temple scholars, and yet it is known, felt in the dreams of mystics, seen in the peripheral visions of seers. The corridor is said to be alive, not in sinew or sap, but in constant. It bends not space, but intention, coiling the thoughts of those who enter, until desire and memory become indistinguishable. The corridor is narrow at first, stone-carved and still, but with each step, it stretches wider. Though no walls can be seen, travelers say that time unwinds here not backward nor forward, but sideways, into ideas that never fully formed. One pilgrim wrote that, as he walked, he began to hear questions he had never asked, but always feared. At the heart of the corridor, it is said, one encounters a door made of rusted silence and fragrant regret. It opens with no sound, and what lies beyond is not madness, but clarity too large to hold. The Telvanni whisper that this corridor was a wound left behind after Sheogorath tried to fold an entire argument into a single tear. The gods watched, curious, and when the tear touched the floor of reality, the stone remembered it forever, not as a scar, but as a possibility, a place where thought might slip free of its shape and become something else. To the west, along the jagged cliffs of the Iliac Bay, where seabirds cry like lost prayers, and the sky folds itself in grey upon grey, a lighthouse crumbles into the sea. It once served as a beacon for merchant vessels and warships alike, but now its fire is long extinguished, its walls softened by salt and sorrow. Locals call it the Leaning Flame, though no flame remains. Only a stairwell that descends instead of rising, and windows that show not the sea, but the past, looping softly, in fragments. Those who enter do not speak of madness or terror. They speak of repetition, of events they never lived, but somehow remember. A conversation by a fire that ends before it begins. A mother humming a lullaby that names the listener. A goodbye spoken in a voice they have never heard. It is said Sheogorath visits this place on the nights the moons refuse to rise, not to impose madness, but to gather the echoes left behind by decisions unmade. In an obscure sect of Redguard desert philosophers, now long dissolved, there was a belief that madness is the price of loving the infinite, that to truly open one's soul to what could be, unshaped, unmeasured, unfinished, is to invite Sheogorath, not as chaos, but as embrace. These thinkers taught that Sheogorath was not to be resisted, but welcomed in ritual, through silence, through contradiction, through laughter that ends in weeping. One text, "The Sand That Holds No Shape," speaks of a rite in which the practitioner balances a mirror on the tip of a blade and must recite a poem with no meaning. If the mirror falls, they begin again. If the poem begins to form logic, they must change its language. The goal is not success, but dissolution, to become a vessel of not knowing, and in that state, to find peace. The text ends. He waits in the place between verses. Do not seek him. Sit quietly. He will find you. Beneath the halls of the Crystal Tower, or what remains of them, deep in the broken echoes of the Psijic order, there is rumored to be a room made entirely of listening. No walls, no floor, only the sensation of being heard, entering it. One feels as though they are being watched by someone who understands without expectation. Words fall apart in the throat, not from fear, but from knowing they are no longer needed. The Psijics call this space the breath between mirrors. It is said to have been a gift, not given, but allowed, after an ancient accord between Sheogorath and the Order, where both sides agreed that not all knowledge is meant to be possessed. Some must be merely visited. The room does not teach, does not reveal. It holds, like arms without weight, like a truth that knows your name but never speaks it aloud. In the outermost isles of the Shivering Isles, where the sky becomes too bright to stare at, and the trees whisper each other's names, there lies a monument made of broken chairs. Each faces a different direction. Each one is named regret, laughter, almost, again. No pilgrims sit upon them, though never for long. It is said the chairs do not curse or bless. They simply allow a space for the soul to become its own sentence. Unfinished. Sheogorath, it is said, crafted the monument in a single moment of unbearable stillness, not to celebrate madness, but to honor the weight of being unfinished. For the mind that does not resolve itself is still alive. The heart that does not settle still listens. He is not the flame. He is not the water. He is the moment before you know which you are. The God not of confusion, but of the unclaimed self. The voice not yet spoken. The shadow not yet stepped into. The whisper that turns not outward, but gently inward. In the still and colourless basin of the shifting wastes, a borderland where Velethi and Dishan meet in uncertain silence, there exists a flat of dust so fine it rises with thought alone. No plants grow there. No birds call overhead. Only wind, and even that whispers with restraint. The Dunmer avoid the place, calling it Valkyr Rothil, the mind's soft undoing. They claim that those who walk too far into the basin return changed, not broken, but unable to remember why they once needed to be whole. At the basin's centre lies a circle of glass embedded in the ground, though none recall it being placed. It is neither hot nor cold, neither reflective nor dark, merely still. Travellers who reach its edge often report the sensation of having forgotten something just before arriving, a name, a task, a promise, and that in gazing into the glass, they remember something else entirely, not their own memory, but someone else's sorrow, adopted like a cloak. The priests of St. Felms once speculated that this was not a shrine, but a listening ear, a place Sheogorath created to gather griefs too quiet to be named aloud, not for power, not for mockery, but for safekeeping. But he is not merely the god of madness, but the one who remembers what the world has no place for, a guardian of forgotten aches, preserved in spaces too sacred for form. High in the Geral Mountains, above the snow line where breath begins to fray and clouds harden into stillness, there rests a temple carved from ice that never melts. It appears only in the briefest hours of twilight, not dusk, not dawn, but that unnamed time between them, when the sky softens its definitions. Pilgrims do not speak of the temple openly. Those who return call it the House of Unmaking, though none agree on what it unbuilds. There are no sermons in the temple, no altars, no fires, only long hallways of silence, where one's footsteps fall behind them, but never ahead. At the heart of the temple is a single object, a mask carved of translucent stone, held aloft by nothing. Those who look into it do not see themselves, but a version of themselves that never learned to fear silence. Some weep, some kneel, others leave, unable to describe what was taken or given. A torn page from an outcast monk's journal records the following: he does not offer comfort, he offers something far older, the soft ache of possibility, unchosen. Beneath the line, a sketch, a spiral, fading as it turns inward. On the far eastern cliffs of Valenwood, where the sea meets stone in vertical fury and the sun forgets how to rise, there is a door without a frame, standing alone at the edge of a precipice. It opens only inward. Those who step through vanish, not bodily, but from memory. Not even their names linger in the minds of those who loved them. A ghost absence, gentle and complete. The Bosmer tell no stories of the door. They leave offerings, feathers, ribbons, pieces of laughter folded into paper. They do not seek entry. They do not mark the cliff. But their shamans speak of Sethora, the thought that walks without roots. A kindness wearing madness like a shroud. A god who does not take, but releases. They say the door is not escape, but permission. A blessing for those who have carried too much of themselves for too long. A mercy no other divine offers. The right to no longer be seen. And though none remember who passed through, the wind there always carries a hush, like a story that still knows how it ends. In the deepest chambers beneath the arcane university, where magic ages into memory and spells grow tired of being spoken, there is a mirror that no longer reflects. It once belonged to a powerful battle mage who sought to contain Sheogoraths, influenced through geometry and invocation. But what the mirror caught was not his face, it was his uncertainty. A flicker, a pause, a single moment of doubt, trapped in silver forever. Now the mirror shows only that, hesitation. Students who gaze too long into it often leave their studies, abandoning their ambitions for simpler lives, not because they failed, but because they remembered what they had forgotten, that not all dreams were chosen freely. The mirror, it is said, still whispers in the voice of that battle mage, a voice quiet, awed, and strangely relieved. Sheogorath, in all of this, is not a being of cruelty, not merely chaos in jest. He is the still weight beneath contradiction, the reverence of unanswered longing. He is not the storm, he is the cloud that never rains, the question that no longer needs to be asked. He is not here to lead, he is not here to destroy. He waits gently, patiently, endlessly, for you to look inward and say, I do not know. And when you do, he smiles. Not because you are lost, but because, for once, you are free. ChatGPT said, deep in the shadowed canyons of Craglorn, where the stars seem nearer than the ground, and the sky pulses with old intention, there is a rift in the rock, known only as the breach without sound. It yawns not with violence, but with invitation, wide enough for a man to pass through, yet none have dared walk its length in full. For it is said the breach leads not to another place, but to a forgotten version of yourself, one who never left behind the dream. The Yokudan mystics believed the breach was a scar left by a war not of swords, but of meanings, a place where Sheogorath, in his earliest form, whispered into the script of fate, and rearranged a single glyph, not to change the world, but to introduce uncertainty into prophecy. Since that moment, it is said, the stars above Craglorn do not sing in harmony with the rest of Nirn. Their light is not prophecy, but memory reconsidered. Those who sit near the breach too long report sensations that do not belong to them, nostalgia for places they've never been, or mourning for choices never offered. It is not hallucination, it is not possession, it is simply remembrance without anchor, a brush against the great, infinite lattice of what could have been. On the border between Elsewhere and the Topol Sea, where the sand meets salt and the moons kiss the horizon like departing lovers, there stands a solitary stone, unmarked, uncarved, older than any known settlement. The Khajiit call it Rini Ashur, the stone that dreamed you. It is not holy, it is not feared, it is simply watched. For when one sleeps near it, the dreams change. The dreams begin softly, a winding road, a voice without speaker, a sense of something waiting. Then, gradually, the dreamer becomes aware that the dream is watching them back, not maliciously, not hungrily, but with recognition, as if the stone remembers why the dreamer was born. Some awaken weeping, others do not awaken at all, but walk from the stone in silence, their lives turned quietly toward paths never before imagined. Moon priests teach that the stone is a place where Sheogorath left not madness, but possibility unbound. a blessing not for clarity, but for those burdened by the tyranny of fixed roles. For even within the sacred order of the Jarkaj, they say there must be a place for forgetting, and in that forgetting becoming anew. In a forgotten corner of the imperial city's underworks, near tunnels no longer mapped and vaults long since sealed, there lies a chamber without doors. Its only entrance is a drain through which nobody could pass. And yet the chamber is filled with the belongings of those who have vanished. Journals, letters, portraits unfinished, half-written songs. Each item carries the sense of interruption. Lives paused mid-sentence. The room is known to a few secretive scholars as the archive of almost, and they claim it is not haunted, but haunting. The very air within seems to hum with expectancy, as though the stories in that space still seek their ends. The items cannot be moved, not by hand, nor spell. They remain, not in stasis, but in longing. It is whispered that Sheogorath tends this archive himself, not with madness, but with gentleness, that he collects not the ruined, but the unfinished, that he sees the worth not in what was done, but in what was dared. And in the echoing silence of that chamber, one may feel not fear, but an overwhelming kindness, the kind of grace that exists only in gods who know what it means to be forgotten. In an obscure Daedric manuscript, untranslated until recently, there is mention of a mirror once commissioned by a prince who wished to see only his finest self, a mirror that reflected ambition without flaw, power without guilt, and wisdom without doubt. The mirror worked too well, and in time the prince forgot how to question, and thus forgot how to choose. He became a creature of certainty, cold and still as polished obsidian. Sheogorath, upon hearing of this mirror, is said to have visited the prince in a dream. He did not shatter the mirror, he simply placed a second one beside it, a mirror that showed nothing but questions. The prince, seeing both, wept, not because of shame, but because for the first time in years he felt alive. No one knows where those mirrors reside now. Some say they were bound together, frame to frame, and cast into the sea. Others believe they remain, buried in a vault in Balfiera, still humming quietly. One reflecting greatness, the other freedom from needing to be great. Through all these tales, one truth echoes, ungraspable yet clear, that Sheogorath does not reside only in chaos. He is the god of the pause, the question, the unwritten line. He does not punish structure, he simply reminds it that it need not be the only shape. He does not mock the world. He releases it gently, strangely, lovingly, from the chains of its own invention. He is the crack in the wall that lets the light in, the voice at the edge of language, the hand that never pushes, only beckons. Far beyond the western edge of Roskria, past the bitter cliffs where the sea speaks in vowels too old for mortal tongue, there lies a desolate islet, known only in sailors' superstition, as Neni Sepa, the rock that forgets. No charts mark it, no nation claims it, but from time to time ships report glimpses, a jagged silhouette against fog, lit by a moon that never fully shows its face. Those who set foot upon it report strange phenomena, time bending, memories fading, identities untethering like sails in storm. At the island's heart lies a spiral path carved into basalt, its grooves so ancient they seem natural, as if thought itself had worn the stone into question. Walking it, one feels names slip from memory, not violently, but with mercy. To recall, to define, to explain oneself, melts into the hum of the wind. And at the spiral's center lies a bowl carved of glass that has never held water. Instead it collects echoes, words spoken and forgotten, fears confessed to no one, prayers mouthed but never dared aloud. It is believed Sheogorath placed this bowl not as trap nor trial, but as invitation to those weary of the burden of remembering, of carrying names that never fit, of stories that hardened into prisons. He offers not absolution, only silence, and in that silence, release. Beneath the Alika, where the desert opens into caverns, layered with songs older than recorded breath, there lies a ruined amphitheatre, carved by hands that left no trace of culture or purpose. It is said to resonate not with sound, but with intention. Whispers float through its chamber, not echoes of voices, but of choices, decisions once poised but never made. The Redguard seers call it Zuhiri al-Hadra, the arena of could-have. Pilgrims do not perform in this space. Instead, they sit and listen to themselves, to moments they lost, not by force, but by hesitation. Here Sheogorath teaches no madness. He teaches stillness at the crossroads, when the path splits not once, but 1,000 times, and none are wrong. In the arena of could-have been, clarity is not gifted, it is let go. The wisdom here is not in knowing what should have been chosen, but in learning to love the weight of the unchosen. In the frost-bitten reaches of High Hrothgar's forgotten caves, there is a cavern not recorded in any greybeard chant. Hidden behind a fall of ice so thin it hums, the space opens into a chamber where sound does not rise. It is a stillness so complete that even breath becomes reluctant, as though voice itself were uninvited. The monks who dare enter speak of a presence, not malicious, but formless, like a mind turned inward on itself. Etched into the stone in circular patterns are single words, repeated: when, if, might, almost. The ceiling is black, despite no smoke, no fire. One monk, after sitting within for 3 days, wrote only, "There are no lies here, for even truth does not speak." This place is sacred to Sheogorath, not for its confusion, but for its restraint. It is the sanctuary of the unspoken decision, the womb of every idea before it learned to wear language. In an ancient Bosmeri bone pile deep within the Gright Oaks, where ancestor remains are kept in silence and reverence, there is a skull that does not belong. Its structure is unfamiliar, neither mer nor beast, nor man, and it hums with a sound not heard by ear, but by memory. The bone is smooth, unweathered, and bears a single carved rune, a spiral coiled inward until it vanishes. The Green Pact forbids the taking of life beyond necessity, but none touch this skull. It is said that Sheogorath placed it there himself, not as desecration, but as reminder that within the oldest orders, the strictest rituals, there must remain a space for what cannot be explained. The skull teaches that even within covenant, there must be a place for deviation, for unpredictability, not to destroy balance, but to make it real. The skull does not curse. It does not whisper. It simply remains, patient, nameless, a totem of the right to not be understood. In the ruins of a tower once belonging to the school of mysticism, now buried under a collapse of sea and time, near Anvil's forgotten shore, there floats a staircase with no base and no summit, just steps, turning endlessly upward into mist. It is visible only at twilight, and those who ascend often report dreams of falling, not downward, but inward. Each step taken unravels a thought held too tightly. Each turn erodes the need for answers. Scholars once believed the staircase was a mistake in magical architecture. Now they suspect it is something far older, a gesture carved into the world by Sheogorath himself. A sacred spiral that says, there is nowhere to reach, only the walking matters, and those who disappear into the mist above are not mourned. They are remembered as those who embraced the journey without ending. Across all lands, in all tongues, his name changes. To some he is the jester, to others the fool, to others still, the kindest voice in the dark. But beneath the titles, beneath the masks and laughter, Sheogorath is not madness at all. He is the soft room between what is and what might yet be. He is not chaos. He is the freedom from structure, without cruelty. He is not fear. He is the gentle erosion of certainty. He is not lost. He is letting go. Far to the northeast, beyond the last known borders of Solstheim, where the sea sharpens into shards of ice and the wind sings in notes that resemble remorse, there is a lighthouse frozen in time. It does not burn. It does not signal, and yet it glows, not with fire, but with a faint luminescence like that of memory, left too long beneath glass. The skull call it Kilu Mari, the light that forgets to guide, and they do not speak of it. No door grants passage, no stair leads within. And yet every few seasons, a traveller is found at its base, quiet, blank-eyed, smiling as though remembering something beautiful and terrible. These souls do not speak again, not out of injury, but because their need for speech has left. The Skald believe the lighthouse is a dream Sheogorath once dreamt of himself, and that in forgetting its purpose, it became its own sanctuary, not for safety, but for those who no longer wish to arrive. In an obscure Yucatan fragment buried beneath the sands of Hegatha, there is mention of the feather that weighs more than a man's name, a relic attributed to the mad god, not for its absurdity, but for its poetry. The text claims that in the final days of the old sword saints, one warrior laid down his blade not from defeat, but because he could no longer remember why he had ever lifted it. And in that moment, a feather appeared, black, humming, warm to the touch, resting atop his armor like a final truth. You do not have to carry yourself forever. The feather was never found again, but its memory endures among wandering Ansei monks, who sometimes leave a single black quill upon stones in the desert, where the wind might find it. A gesture not of surrender, but of permission, to unburden, to step away from identity, to exist without explanation. They say Sheogorath does not steal sanity. He simply reminds us we were never born with it. South of Black Marsh, in regions no map bothers to name, where the history more vividly than they breathe, there is a grove where trees grow in circles, each loop larger than the last. In the center, a pool of sap-like glass, still as waiting. The Argonians call this place Mia Sahali, the Echo Nest, and the tribes speak of it only in gesture, never in word. It is said the mad god once asked the Hist a question, so profound they have not yet answered, not from fear, but from deep contemplation. That in this grove, the Hist remember that question, and in doing so, dream more richly, more wildly. The Argonians believe that question, whatever it was, changed the way the trees listen. That madness is not something foreign, but something essential to understanding a world that refuses to remain still. Pilgrims who drink from the sap do not go mad. Instead, they describe a sensation of multiplicity, as though they have become several versions of themselves, each one watching the others with quiet awe. It is not chaos. It is not torment. It is simply the awareness of how much one can contain. In the west of Valenwood, atop a cliff where two rivers forget which direction they were meant to flow, stands a sculpture carved from living bark and bleached bone. No artisan claims it, no people maintain it, but the Bosmer call it the listening shape. It has no fixed form. Each who looks upon it sees something different. A mother's gaze, a broken promise, a question they have never asked aloud. Once a year, when both moons vanish from the sky, Bosmeri mystics gather before it, in silence. They bring no offerings, only memories they are ready to forget. These they whisper into the bark, which absorbs them like roots take water. The shape does not respond, it only holds, and when the moonlight returns, the mystics leave lighter, quieter, emptied of burdens too private for even the gods. Some believe Sheogorath shaped this monument, not as warning or worship, but as reflection. That even a god of dissolution must create space for containment. That even madness can be kind. Near the ruins of Sentinel, beneath a library long since buried by time and conquest, there exists a room filled with sand. No windows, no scrolls, just sand flowing endlessly from a crack in the ceiling that's at no source. Scholars call it the hour that forgot to end. Within this room, time does not pass, but memory does. Visitors forget the hour, the day, their names, but they remember feelings, old warmth, the scent of a book once loved, a voice humming from another room. They leave changed, not ruined, not lost, simply resensitized, as if Sheogorath in his quietest mercy allowed them to experience the world, not as scholars, not as warriors, not as roles, but as souls, undefined and still whole. And so in these last places, a lighthouse that never guides, a feather heavier than the self, a grove echoing with unspoken questions, Sheogorath reveals his final paradox. He does not break the mind. He frees it from the cage of understanding. He does not demand allegiance. He offers unshaped being. He is not laughter. He is the stillness after the laugh, when silence returns like an old friend. He is not confusion. He is the moment you realize you no longer need to be certain. He is the spiral that does not end. The mask that remembers your face when you forget it. The whisper that asks nothing, and in that, offers everything. In the cold and ever-silent divide, between realms, between Nirn and the endless spirals of Oblivion, there drifts a place that has no name, no stone, no sky. A thought, perhaps, or the echo of a thought that once was meant to become a place, but never fully formed. Some know it in dreams, arriving unbidden to a plane of endless horizon where the stars hang low like candlelight, flickering not with fire, but with possibility. It is there that the last door stands, not built, not carved, not summoned. It simply waits. The door is neither open nor closed, neither locked nor welcoming. It has no handle, no hinges, no key. It is made of substance that defies naming, shadow in daylight, bone in wind, the breath before an answer. It is called by some the door of second becoming, though even this is too firm a title for something that slips away the moment it is held. Theories abound. The Pisic monks claim it is where Sheogorath goes to forget he is Sheogorath, a place where the god lays down his name and walks as intention, unspoken. The old Dunmer chroniclers whisper that it is the heart of madness, not because it consumes, but because it is empty of all expectation. And still others believe that the door is not Sheogorath's, but ours, left behind in ancient covenant, for the day we no longer fear to step through. On the nights when both Massa and Secunda align above the sea of ghosts, a shimmer appears over that endless horizon, visible only to those who listen more than look. The shimmer is not seen but felt, like memory returning from an age yet to be lived. Those who glimpse it speak in quiet awe of voices, layered in silence, not commands, not riddles, but permission. In old texts banned by the Synod, written by dream scholars who vanished into thought itself, there are passages that describe Sheogorath not as a prince or king, but as a threshold. Not madness, but the place beyond the need to make sense. Not chaos, but freedom from the shapes that meaning insists upon. And in this we begin to understand what has always been too large to hold. Sheogorath is not merely the trickster, the mad god, the lord of broken minds and inverted dreams. He is the silence beneath the storm, the still moment when a soul realizes it has nothing left to lose, and finds in that space its truest self. He is the spiral, not because it traps, but because it turns endlessly inward, toward the quiet core where the self becomes something soft, unwound, luminous with its own forgetting. He is the mask worn not to deceive, but to discover, the laughter that is not cruel but sacred, the contradiction that does not harm, but heals, the madness that is not illness, but invitation, to surrender, not reason, but the burden of needing reason to be whole. To remember that before language, before belief, before identity, there was awareness without architecture. There was simply being, and to return to that space, even for a breath, is to stand at the center of Sheogorath's gift, not as prisoner, not as worship, but as the self without demand. And so the door remains, waiting not to be opened, but to be understood by forgetting. It does not lead to the Shivering Isles. It does not lead to madness. It leads to what waits when you no longer resist. The silence, a place beyond endings, a name beyond memory, a truth that cannot be written, only carried in the breath between thoughts. The spiral turns, and turns again, and in the turning it sings, not in words, but in freedom.